Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Charlton Board of Selectmen's meeting for October 14th, 2014. I'll ask that we begin with the pledge to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The chair respects the requests that all participants treat each other with courtesy and be acknowledged by the chair before speaking. Those in attendance are requested to turn off their cell phones or put them on vibrate so as not to disrupt the proceedings, and those wearing hats are being asked to remove them, please. Thank you. Our agenda for this evening consists of review of the regular selectmen's meeting minutes of September 20th, which will be followed by community relations, announcements, and open forum. We have two items. We have one appointment of a special officer, and we have one resignation from the Activities Council and Community Development Committee. We have four appointments. We have a 6:40 appointment from the on a government study presentations. We have a 7 o'clock appointment with the Old Commons. We have a 7:15 appointment for the release of Chapter 61. We have a 7:30 appointment with Brian Ceccarelli, Fire Inspector. We have 6 items under new business. We have the winter wash sand bid. Number 2 is a private snowplow contractor recommended increase. Number 3 is the appointment of the Fire Department Provisional Officer. Number 4 is the application for a special license for Mary Combs. Number 5 is the ABCC advisory for off-premise retail licenses. And number 6 is the Mass Selectmen's Association Fall Conference. We have 3 items under old business: discussion of a regional dispatch center. Number 2, discussion of a regional veterans district. And number 3 is the fiscal 15 special town meeting for Tuesday, October 21st. That will be followed by any committee reports or policy reviews we have, which will be followed by the selectmen's student select persons report. And I'd like to take this minute to welcome Emily Sprague back as our student select person. This is her second year with us, and she did a great job last year, so we're very happy to have her back. The student select persons report will be followed by the town administrator's report, which will be followed by any business unknown at the time of posting. Now, we're going to take things a little out of order here, because I have, going on a hunch, I have a sneaky feeling that most people are here for one particular issue. And so what we're going to do, we're going to go through our appointments, and then we're going to postpone the government study presentation, the 6:40 appointment, to a little bit later, try to get everything going a little earlier. And then as soon as we can, we're going to jump to the regional dispatch discussion, get that done as quick as we can so you folks can have your say and get home, okay? So the first will be with regards to the minutes of the regular selectmen's meeting of September 30th.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Zafirovich,
I move that we accept the September 30th meeting minutes.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. And also, I just want to take a second to apologize to those here and those at home for my voice. I'm at the tail end of a cold, so I'm sucking lozenges and drinking water just to keep what's left of my voice. We do have some announcements. The 2014 second quarter real estate and personal property bills are due Monday, November 3rd, 2014. Bills were mailed the last week of June, together with the August 1st billing. Office hours for the collector are Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. to 7 p.m., closed Fridays. Payments received after the due date are subject to an annual interest rate of 14% per annum. Questions on billing may be directed to the collector's office at 508-248-2239. For questions on assessments, please call the assessor's office at 508-248-2233. The Charlton Rays Foundation is now taking applications for heating assistance for senior citizens. Download an application from the website at www.rayscharlton.org. That's www.reascharlton.org. Or you can call the Senior Center at 508-248-2231. Trick-or-treating this year in Charlton will be held on Friday, October 31st, from 5:30 p.m. until 7:30 p.m. Please play it safe, stay with an adult, and use a flashlight. And please don't eat any candy till it's been checked by an adult. The Planning Board will be holding a workshop specific to the Charlton Village Center to be held on Wednesday, October 15th at 7:30 p.m. in the Charlton Senior Center. If anyone has any questions on that, you can certainly call the Planning Board for more information. And once again, our special town meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 21st, 2014, at 7 p.m. at the Charlton Middle School. The annual Charlton Christmas tree lighting will be held on Sunday, December 7th. This year's celebration will begin with a Christmas concert at the Charlton Public Library in Dexter Memorial Hall from 4:30 p.m. until 6 p.m. At 6 p.m., the concert concludes with the Festival of Lights parade from CVS Pharmacy to the Town Common, and Santa Claus will be in the parade, and he will make his way in front of the library to meet children and hand out candy canes. Do you have any new or slightly used Halloween costumes that you no longer need? Please consider donating them to families of Chip-In. There is a box located in the Town Hall until Thursday, October 16th, 2014. Do you have any other announcements? Do you have anyone here for open forum? Then we will move on. We have one appointment of a special police officer. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a memo from Chief Purvier asking the board to appoint Michael Dominguez as a special police officer for the Charlton Police Department. Mr. Dominguez has been serving as an auxiliary police officer for the town of Charlton since March 20th, 2012. During his tenure with the Charlton Police Department, Auxiliary Patrolman Dominguez has been an exemplary officer, volunteering hundreds of hours to the town of Charlton. Chief Purvier states that in addition, with the authorization of the board, Officer Dominguez entered the Worcester Police Department Basic Recruit Full-Time Police Academy on October 15th, 2012 as a sponsored candidate representing the town of Charlton, and on April 4th, 2012 successfully completed and graduated from said academy. Officer Dominguez incurred all of the related costs of this training. He will be a great asset for the police department, and this appointment will help offset staffing shortages and reduce the payment of overtime. I would recommend the board appoint Auxiliary Police Officer Michael Dominguez as a special police officer for the town of Charlton Police Department.
Thank you. Chief?
Through the chair, thank you. Like my letter conveys, Officer Dominguez has been exemplary with us, helping us out, and has always been there to offset in his capacity, our needs in his capacity as an auxiliary officer. This would just help expand his capabilities and his, for my department, to utilize him in other areas.
Thank you, Chief. Does any member of the board have any questions for the chief before Mr. Dominguez? Mr. Singer?
Just one question. Does this affect us as far as having to do MOUs with the union or anything else for specials?
Currently, just, to be transparent, we have a memorandum where we have one special officer actually doing patrol, and we have a memorandum, with the union, and that special officer's been working in place of a full-time officer vacancy to help offset costs.
Okay, so we don't need one for just a general special appointment?
No.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Zafirovich?
I move that we appoint Officer Dominguez as a special police officer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and welcome, Officer Dominguez. And next up, we have a resignation from the Activities Council and Community Development Committee. Ms. Graver.
Yes, sir. Attached is a resignation from Pauline Haig from the Activities Council and the Community Development Committee. Ms. Haig has stated that due to poor health and soon moving out of town, it keeps her from being active on these committees. I would like to thank Ms. Haig for her hard work and dedication that she provided to both the Activities Council and the Community Development Committee. A letter of thanks has been completed and in your sign folder.
Thank you. Wishes of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we accept Mrs. Haig's letter of resignation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're going to jump out of line a little bit here. We have 20 minutes before our next scheduled appointment, so I am going to jump down now to our first item under old business, which is the discussion of the Regional Dispatch Center. I'm going to ask that we maintain order. If anyone would like to speak, let me know that you'd like to speak, and you may speak when acknowledged. Ms. Craver, if you'd start us, please.
Yes, sir. First, I'd like to say it is great to see so many people.
It is nice
Here
to see
for
people
an
taking
issue.
the initiative to come out without question.
We should have controversy more often.
Okay, at the board's goals and objectives meeting, nope, that's a different one, hold on. Going out of
Oh, I
order,
know
so
what
now
that
I
was.
need to find it. I was holding the other one. Oh, this is way down.
It's gonna be late hours until old business.
BCC. Is it in the packet? Have you found it?
No, it goes right to,
Goes right
veterans.
to
Did you put it in?
the Veterans District.
It does.
Special town
Then it's
meeting.
not here. Okay. She didn't put it in, all right. Let me get it from her. I think she might have made a separate one then.
It's in Dropbox.
It's in the
As a
Dropbox
separate.
separate?
Where do we go?
You catch
Back to Dropbox?
Regional Dispatch PDF,
Right, the spreadsheets or this question.
right here.
There you go.
Yep,
Thank you very much.
right on top of that,
Technical
Cindy.
difficulties. Thank you. Per the direction of the board, we have researched the pros and cons of entering into a regional dispatch with the Southern Worcester County Communications Center, including meeting with the Police Alliance to impact bargain. First, let me report that the Alliance, rightly so, focused on protecting the full-time dispatchers presently employed by Charlton. They were concerned about the members being given positions at the regional dispatch, as well as protecting their seniority, benefits, and pay. I can report that the wish of the dispatchers and the Police Alliance is to keep the center in-house first, but if Charlton were to join the SWCC, the union's demands can be met. We have received several letters and emails asking questions about the move. I'd like to go through some of the questions and answers that may help to answer some of the intricacies of this issue. There are compelling reasons to both keep the dispatch in-house and to join a regional dispatch center. It is truly a community preference, and I'm glad to see everyone here to talk about that. There are no big cost savings at the present time, but I do clearly know that doing nothing is putting the town at risk. The community needs to either fund the dispatch fully or enter a regional center. The state mandates are growing, and it is only a matter of time before there is simultaneous medical calls that cannot be handled and the town may become liable. Much of this discussion has been motivated by the need to reduce potential risk. That risk is a resident being on the phone for a medical emergency and another call comes in for another medical emergency. The dispatcher cannot leave the first call to take the second one. The benefit of a regional dispatch is that there is more than one dispatcher available, and call response time may be quicker to get help from a dispatcher, and while one is walking you through the issue like how to stop a baby choking, the other is calling the ambulance. Also, we have received 6 emails regarding the discussion tonight. They are attached for your review. The chief sent an email discussing his support for joining a regional dispatch, but questioned whether, and that chief actually is Chief Cloutier, sent an email discussing his support for joining a regional dispatch, but questioned whether the Southern Worcester County is a good match for Charlton. His email is also attached. So if I can now, I'd just like to go through the questions and
Please.
answers. And originally, this started out as a question from one of the selectmen. The chief responded. I took it and then added some more information based on some of the emails that we'd received. So certainly, this won't answer all the questions, but hopefully it'll be a good start for discussion.
Thank you.
So what happens to our equipment? If we regionalize, the state will remove all of our 911 equipment, and I think some of you do have copies of this. What if regionalization busts? If the Southern Worcester County Communications Center was a bust, Charlton would either join another regional center or would have to reestablish its own dispatch center. How would we go back to being our own dispatch center again? If we were to reestablish the Charlton Police Department's dispatch center, the town of Charlton would be responsible for independently funding all the costs, which currently would be approximately $250,000. The town of Hopedale recently separated from Mendon Regional Dispatch Center, and the cost to reestablish their own E911 system was around $250,000. Do we lose any grants or funding from the state to go to regional? If the town of Charlton joins the Southern Worcester County, we will no longer be eligible for state 911 grant funding. Currently, the Charlton Police Department receives $36,305 from the state 911 grant, which is support and incentive grant to offset the costs of running our own emergency 911 call center. We also currently receive $10,000 from the state 911 grant for training and certification of all our dispatchers and officers who answer 911 calls. And we are also eligible to apply for additional state 911 training grant funding if our needs exceed $10,000. The regional center would be responsible for all of this training. Is there a contract to this? Currently, the town of Charlton has not entered into an intermunicipal agreement to join the Southern Worcester County Center. If the Board of Selectmen decided to move towards a regional dispatch with Southern Worcester County, it would recommend to vote their intention pending an IMA that fully supports the hiring of our 3 full-time staff along with other needs of the town. If so, what time frame are we looking at? With respect to a time frame for joining the Regional Dispatch Center, the town of Webster has made it quite clear that in order to ensure employment for our current full-time dispatchers, that Charlton needs to sign the IMA before another community such as Oxford does. Also, the center has indicated that if we wait too long, that the town of Charlton may be assessed a buy-in amount to join the center and would not be guaranteed its employees have jobs. Why are you considering this move? According to the chief, given the new medical requirements for training and handling calls, the town of Charlton would need to commit substantial funds to hire new dispatchers and provide additional training. This was one of the items sought to fund through the override, which was not approved by the voters. The Southern Worcester County Regional Dispatch has the capacity to handle up to 5 towns, and with each town joining, the cost for Charlton would be reduced. What are the costs? So there's a sheet that you have in front of you. I can go through those. So if, at the top, and some of you do have copies of this, present costs for the operation, including 3 full-time dispatchers, the per diem dispatchers, health insurance, life insurance, Medicare, workman's comp, total comes out to $261,000. The cost for a regional dispatch plus the added staff, the chief is requesting a 19th officer and a clerk matron, so that there would still be someone in the police department station, so we wouldn't have what they term a dark station. So the projected cost for to go to the regional communication center, if it was only 3 towns, it's $294,000. If it's 4 towns, which Oxford has stated their interest, it would be $264,000. The cost of 1 full-time clerk and matron with benefits is $57,000. The cost of 1 full-time patrolman with benefits is $76,000. That would be that 19th officer. The cost of, and I do want to say that the chief has said if that 19 officer comes through, it helps them with float, so they would have additional, it would be able to cut down on overtime. Cost of $1,600 per month to transfer data, Viva Charlton to the center. That cost is not firm. We haven't confirmed that yet. We did put in our own dark fiber. We're not sure whether or not that dark fiber, we're connected to Dudley, whether or not we'd be able to jump over to the center. So that is an unknown, and I appreciate that when putting these costs together, the chief added it in. The state 911 grants would go away, and we would not be responsible for that training. So the cost with the loss of the grant funding would be $494,000 with 3 towns and $464,000 with 4 towns. When you juxtapose that to the cost of fully operating a dispatch center here in Charlton, and I added the 19th officer in because I don't think that you can compare the two for the services that we would receive. So if we do like to like, we'd have a regional dispatch and we'd have the 19th officer. The total cost to operate the Charlton Police Department dispatch, total cost for the patrolman is the same, $76,000. The total cost to add a 4th dispatcher and a 5th dispatcher with benefits and 2 per diem shifts is $73,000 and $76,000 each. That comes out to $488,000 for 3 towns, and well, it says 48, and the same for 4 towns. If you look at the 2 columns, so if we entered in now with only the towns of Webster and Dudley, 3 towns, it would cost us $5,000. We would have the 19th officer also. If we went in with the 4 towns and Oxford was also part of it, we would see a savings of $24,000.
Thank you. Now, a couple of points I would like to make here. First off, I heard, and I saw in print and social media and such, that this was a public hearing. This is not a public hearing. This is just a discussion on an item that the Board of Selectmen may take some action on. Secondly, as we can see by a full house here, that this has generated a lot of discussion and a lot of interest, and one person tells one person something and it goes to 1 or 2 other people, things start getting distorted just a little bit. So a couple of things I want to be clear on is this is something that has been in discussion for at least a couple of years. It sped up very quickly, very recently with the Webster Dispatch Center opening. The reason that we wanted to move quickly on this, if we were going to move quickly on it, would be, as the town administrator stated, first of all, once that center is staffed, it's staffed. And as towns come in, those towns, as we are doing, are pushing to have their people on the staff. We're trying to protect the jobs of our dispatchers. That's number 1. Number 2 is, as the town administrator also stated, is that if we go in later rather than sooner, it would be more expensive. Now, a couple of things that I've learned in this process is that the state is pushing very, very hard for regionalization of services, particularly things like dispatch. There is new enhanced 911 coming, and there are many people in the room who can speak to it better than I can, but there's enhanced 911 coming. Now, right now, if you're in your car on a cell phone and you call 911, that call goes to the state police, regardless of where you are. They direct you to your town. My understanding is with enhanced 911, even from your cell phone, your call will go directly to your town. You can do Skype, there's lots of enhancements with this new 911 system, and the enhanced 911 will only be going to regional dispatch centers. So we are being, funding is being, priority is being given. Chief, then correct me.
They will start to migrate, but within the next 18 months, every PSAP, primary safety answering point, will have it, regardless. They will go, they have 6 beta sites that they're gonna start on, but when I talked to Mona Wallace at State 911, all existing PSAPs will eventually get it by July 1st of 2016. Plus the
Okay.
training, requisite training.
Okay. So but we are being pushed, the state is pushing towards regionalization, and there is a lot to be said for regionalization. Now, some of the questions that I've had, I'm not speaking for the board, I'm speaking for myself. Couple of the questions I've had is, number one, the town of Charlton being as big as it is as a town geographically and such, do we want to regionalize? That's my first question. Do we want to do this? My second question is, if we do want to do this, or feel we need to do this, whether we want to or not, is Dudley, Webster, Oxford, whoever else may end up, is that where we want to go, or do we want to look at something along the Route 20 corridor like a Sturbridge, Southbridge, Charlton dispatch area? Now, should we do that? That's something that would be years in process. And the third is this our best option? So those are the discussions we've had. Nothing, I've heard that we're trying to cramp things down people's throats, we're trying to do end-around runs and all those kinds of things. Not the case. If going into Dudley Webster or the Webster Regional Dispatch Center is the right thing for Charlton, there are significant advantages for doing it now. Significant advantages. Hence prompted the conversation, and we made it a point. If we were trying to do an end around, we wouldn't have made it a point to try to get things in the press and get the word out around town that we'd be having this discussion tonight. We want people here. We want to hear what people have to say about this. This is a big move for the town. And as I've said to many people on this, speaking for myself, I'll make a decision and let the chips fall where they will if people feel that's a good decision or a bad decision. But I don't want to make an uninformed decision. So we're trying to gather all this information and make an informed decision. So that being said, I'll open it up if any other members,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair?
Singer?
Just a couple of quick comments. I'm not opposed to regionalizing dispatch. I'm just opposed to it right now. And I want to hear what everyone else has to say, but just for me, I know that town has entered into agreements in the past for various things. And whenever we've entered into agreements without taking time to do due diligence and research, it's always turned out bad. And I just don't want that to be the case here. I know our fire chief has mentioned regionalizing may be the way to go, but maybe not with that group. I want to know why. I've heard stories about regionalization that were positive. I'd like to have the chance to find out why they were positive. I've also found out, just from reading our own handout, that Hopedale had gone regional and then left it to go back to their own. I want to have a chance to talk to them. Why did regionalization not work out for you to the cost of $250,000 for your taxpayers? I want to have time to do the research. I know that it may have been prior to the Webster Regional Dispatch Center going live, but just recently we had talked about regional dispatch again. And I was the one who raised my hand and said, I'll take that on. It's going to take a few months to probably research. And then it went from that to we're here. And there was just no time for that research to be done. So I just feel like right now, those points alone are already more than enough for me to step back from making a decision to move ahead with anything at this point. I disagree with the town administrator on only one point, and that is the need to go with an example of cost to operate fully staffed dispatch and a 19th officer. If we went to cost to operate fully staffed dispatch, keeping dispatch here, and I'm just throwing this out there as another point, if we went to fully staffed dispatch here without adding a 19th officer, it actually lowers our cost by $77,000. So then we could still be keeping dispatch here in Charlton, have fully staffed dispatch, but still be 77, actually at that point it's approximately 80,000 a year less than going regional. So there's just still too many wild cards out there for me to move ahead with that.
And thank you, Mr. Singer. One other point I'd like to make very clear here is at the annual town meeting, it was brought up to fund a dispatcher and fund another police officer. And while people at town meeting, which is a lot of the faces I see in this room, the faces we see at town meeting, voted overwhelmingly yes, that we want to do that. When it went to a general town ballot, the town overwhelmingly said, no, we don't want to fund that. So these are the issues that we have to face. We can decide we may decide that keeping it in town is the best way to go for the residents of Charlton to offer the best service, all of those things. If the people at town meeting say, we're not funding it, or people in the general election say, we're not funding it, then our hands are tied on that. Mr. McGrath?
To the chair, I think, first of all, when we did our goals and objectives and we were talking about this, one of the things was that we looked at the mandate that the town gave us at the ballot box, which was we want to cut cost. Run the town with the money that you have. And that's what we're trying to do. This isn't something that's just come up, and there's gonna be other issues coming up that are gonna probably have the same amount of interest from this group of townspeople. The ultimate thing is that a lot of your fellow townspeople want the services, but they don't wanna pay for them. One of the questions I wanna know is, what is going to be the cost increased going down the road 2 or 3 years for the dispatch if we keep it in town? Okay? If people want services, they're gonna have to pay. If they don't wanna pay, services are gonna disappear, and this is a service. We're looking at something that in the long run is gonna cut cost for the town. So, as much as we're gonna hear tonight that people wanna keep this in town and have, we wanna keep things as status quo, we cannot run this town without money, okay? And this is, not to get off the subject, but we cannot fund the operating side of the budget from the stabilization fund every year. It's suicidal, and that's the road we're going down. So as much as you people here want to have all these services and that, you have to start looking at, we have the lowest tax rate in the state. And we need to do something to fix the structural deficit, okay? The FinCom has been speaking about it, the Board of Selectmen has been speaking about it, and nothing has happened on the town side to correct this issue, okay? I don't know how we're gonna do it, but this is just one of the tough discussions that we're gonna have. You're gonna see other tough discussions coming up, and it's gonna involve people. So,
Thank you. Mr. Singer?
The one thing I left off, I did want to add, was that you hear a lot of talk about financial, and it is a financial decision, there's no question, but it's not only a financial decision, it also is a safety decision, the community. We all want to save money and be able to run our town more efficiently, but not to the point of jeopardizing the safety of you and everyone else who lives in town. So that's also a part of this. And as Mr. McGrath just pointed out, this, it does boil down to, at least number-wise, a financial question. It's a big part of our budget, and the board's gonna have to, as we move forward, work within our means to make it work. And this is one aspect of a much larger puzzle, if we should say, that encompasses every aspect of the town, not just emergency services. So I just wanted to point out to you that, as I mentioned, there might be another option in here that's more than we're paying now, but less than regionalizing, and there's so much more research to do, but it's not just a financial question.
Ms. Cooper?
I appreciate all the work that has gone into the background information that we have so far. There's a lot of information here to understand, but there's a lot more that we need. One of the things is, again, the long-term financial impact. Have we received any input from our finance committee? And we need to look at the safety of our residents. We have some unanswered questions about how this would affect response time, what kind of coverage might be needed within the stations to be able to maintain the safe aspect that we have within our towns now.
Thank you. Chief, go ahead.
Okay, first I want to start off by just saying to the public that this subject, the regionalization, started in 2010. There was a study done by Lieutenant Ekman back then. Just to go back a little further in history, in 2006, the town spent $110,000 plus $40,000 in a grant, so $150,000. We refurbished the current dispatch center to put 2 answering points in the station, so that way we could, as we continue to grow, that we could add a second. To the credit of your board and town administrator, as we kept moving forward, and the Finance Committee, we kept looking for ways to solve the staffing problem. You did put on a ballot to add a fourth dispatcher, along with other things. That was not supported, okay? To where we got today, and I guess at quite the fast pace while we're here, is because we were trying to not miss an opportunity to go to Webster if that was the right decision, but to analyze and also try to preserve the employment of our current people. So to say that it was the impetus of one person or one group trying to run something roughshod through, that is not the case. You can ask the town administrator, going back and forth as far as, were you for this? Are you against this? Why? And we're going back and forth, trying to define all the unknowns. Because initially, when we started looking at this, I thought we would be going into it with a cost, and we would save somewheres in the vicinity of about $100,000. Mr. Safarovich, sitting on the Finance Committee, those were some of the initial discussions, okay, going back several years. So when the town administrator, myself, Chief Cloutier, went over a few weeks ago, we were presented with a packet from the SWCCC, from Webster, and they showed the different makeups of if it was 2 towns, 3 towns, or 4 towns, and when I saw just for the 3 towns, the cost of $294,673, we were talking back and forth, trying to juxtapose, what we do now versus what we do, what their costs were. So the costs were higher than what I anticipated, and, they broke everything down, communication center director, to share that out, public safety dispatches, part-time other labor, regular overtime, and the list goes on, not to read them all to save time. So we've been going back and forth, trying to discern what to do. So town administrator asked me to look at what was the cost. So our most recent full year of operating was FY14. So everything, and the town administrator already had spoken about this, it's $261,679.23. That's what it costs us to operate. We also utilized officers, myself and other staff. We trained them as EMDs to be able to man the desk, when we had enough staffing to answer the calls. But that's not always been the case, and so there's kind of a hidden savings in there that's not shown on this spreadsheet. So with the projected cost about going forward, the number with just the 3 towns, the $494,280.08, okay, I took into account everything that I know. If, we spoke about, if we leave Charlton, okay, and go to Webster, so that way they have dispatchers there, what do we leave behind as far as at least some type of manning? So the idea, you look at it and say, chief's asking for 1 full-time clerk, matron, and another officer. The thought behind that was this. The dispatchers do a lot of different things besides just dispatching that are administrative in nature. So to be able to have documents for the public, to watch the cells and whatever, we talked about a dual role as a clerk to help with administrative tasks, and also during that time when the person's working, 3 to 11, 2 to 10, whatever we figured out, that person would act in another capacity. On the off hours, when nobody else was there, okay, like during the day, we were going to try and use current staff, to be able to accommodate the public. We might have to define office hours or whatever, but the 19th officer, the concept behind that was to try and maintain staffing as best we could with 3 officers per shift, so that way if we had to have an officer come in and monitor the cells, okay? Because right now the dispatchers monitor the cells. And to understand some of what the dispatchers do, I call them like a force multiplier. even with just 2 officers on, an officer can bring a person in under arrest or under protective custody, and if they have to go answer another call, they can quickly do a search, put them in a cell, and go out there. Without the dispatchers there, we don't have that capacity. The other thing that they perform right now is if we have a drunk driving, they can act as a witness, because now the state requires that you have to have a witness when we conduct breathalyzers. Town administrator and I talked about, well, what if we went out of town to do some of those other things, but now we're taking officers out of the town for a period of time and not being available to answer calls, so without ramping up with other officers, going out of town is not really conducive to doing that. There are a lot more negatives. The other thing about having not dispatchers there, especially when we're bringing in people, juveniles, women in, and having whatever, you also have the dispatchers there that are also, manning, starting the cameras to record what's going on, can, assist in a lot of areas. They prepare the documents before the officers come in for their cases, their accident reports. They're all waiting. So they are a force multiplier. So there's a lot of things, not to go into further detail. So one of the aspects of things that I looked at and I discussed with the town administrator, and is because of the cost being so high after we analyze everything, and Mr. Singer, you commented to it about 2 full-time dispatchers, day shift, 1 day shift and through the week, and then 1, 3 to 11, being about $150,000. One thing that I had discussed, okay, which is not on here, if we could initially start with a 4th dispatcher and just running that person, say a split shift between the days, we would look and analyze at the heaviest times and put 1 dispatcher on, and then for the same time period over the weekend, 2 additional shifts with a per diem. So that would range, depending on how we start the shift with the shift differential in there. If we go high end, it would be around $76,000, okay? So if we just started off with the way we are and added, to our annual cost, it would be about that. Is that the perfect way? No, but it's a way to kind of grow in there, and I think if we, it's a way of getting us moving forward, as a standalone. The institutional knowledge, that the dispatchers have for the town and the people is lost when going over. But I want to say this, okay, and I think the town administrator and some of the selectmen have also expressed it. There is a liability to the town if, under the emergency medical dispatch requirements, if we are not able to take all the calls and address them properly. So we need to do something, okay? And the idea is we're looking for solutions. And whatever those are and whatever the town decides, no matter which way we go, it's going to be an increase to the town costs. And so the idea is, my personnel, are very passionate about what they do. They're very good at what they do, and the idea is Charlton has been well served by them. So the idea is, I just want to say also that Chief Bent in Webster, Chief Wayner in Dudley, personal friends of mine, and I trust them implicitly as far as in our discussions and dialogue, okay? So the idea is there is a loss going over there, and there's a cost, there's a cost going over, and how you reframe how we do things in Charlton also has a cost. I'm glad people are here tonight, because regardless of what we are contemplating, the taxpayers that are sitting in the room, it is their town. And for 15 years plus as chief, I want to do what is best for Charlton, but also with the understanding what the residents, town workers, the board, town administrator, I wanted to move in that direction. The town of Webster has done nothing. They've been above board. They've been trying to work with us, okay? Whether that's the right fit, okay? And to speak on the question, I have met, with town of Southbridge and other, and Sturbridge in regards to regionalization. The state will come in and do a study. My understanding that Southbridge is very interested. Charlton was interested in that kind of, regional center. I cannot speak, Chief Ford has been injured, in a motorcycle accident. We have not had a recent dialogue whether he would be, whether he'd still be interested in going forward. But here we are. This is a very big decision for Charlton. And the idea is the people in Charlton that have responded to me, I have, emails and like you, and I have people that have talked to me. Okay, this is their community, the face of their agencies that they pay taxes for. They have the say in how the staffing goes. They have the say in the funding. But nobody here is working in one direction or the other to pull anything a fast one. I just want to, and everybody's been working very hard. Maybe we haven't done all the right things, been, giving all the information, but this thing has been moving at a very fast pace as of late because of, because of Webster moving into its station and needing to get up and going, and Dudley signing with Webster. They want to bring everything together. That doesn't mean we have to follow suit, but I would just say to you that regardless whether we stand alone or we go, we need to have much more information and dialogue, so that way, no matter what, that we provide the best services for the community and we safeguard our long-standing personnel, because it would be disingenuous to do anything other than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments or questions from the board?
No.
Mrs. Zafirovich.
Just to echo what my fellow selectmen have been saying, that a lot of this information hasn't been brought to us until very recently, a lot of the very pertinent information. And frankly, I'm very surprised on the lack of financial savings that the chief has commented on. I think now, I sincerely doubt we'll be acting on this tonight, acting on going forward with this tonight, because there's just so many unknowns, as Mr. Singer has said earlier. So I think we're mostly on the same page when it comes to that, hearing my fellow selectmen and hearing a lot of people from the town.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to be recognized to come up and speak. If you raise your hand, you'll acknowledge, Chief.
Thank you very much for recognizing me, sir. One of the things that I've always heard throughout my lifetime is that all decisions are based on emotion backed up by facts. And so consequently, I think that it's really important to look at the facts, because it does drive us to that decision, even though the facts don't really make the decision, but it can help us in that area. One of the things that I did send over to you today was the sheet that we worked on yesterday with Captain Babineau, to actually identify how many times we actually call Webster and Dudley to our community. And basically, it comes up, added together, it comes up to about 8% of our total calls for mutual aid. Where the towns of Sturbridge and Southbridge, we call those two communities 49% of the time. So I think that's a very huge number to actually look at, to make sure that we are in the right communities. I am all about regionalization. I've been regionalizing as much as I can in our community since I started as a firefighter in this town. We started the District 7 Recruit Training Program with Chief Coleman from Auburn and myself many, many years ago. I've been heavily involved with Tri-Epic. With Tri-Epic is the Sturbridge, Southbridge, and Charlton was the tri-communities that started putting things together on a regional basis as well. We've also been involved with the tri-community, the dive team, which was a regional dive team and also a regional tech team that we work together. So, and I'm sure that the list will continue as time goes on in my tenure as long as I can help it, because I feel regionalization is definitely the way to go. It's just, is this the right way to go with this 3 communities or 4 communities that we're looking at? I don't want to really jump into, out of the frying pan into the fire per se, because of the reason that we do have documentation that actually even Auburn runs at 12% of our calls that we call, and Oxford runs 17% of our calls that we call to those communities as well. Now let's think about the whole concept of the regional dispatch center itself. The regional dispatch center is there to push out the 911 calls to the communities that need the 911 help. If those communities have to call, say the Webster contingent needs to call Southbridge to see if they even have an ambulance ready because Charlton's tied up doing other ambulance calls, it seems kind of counterintuitive because they don't even know what Southbridge's availability is. Now, I know that there's going to be GPSs put on the ambulances and such to make sure that we can dispatch equipment to certain locations and all, but I've heard also that I don't think that Southbridge or Sturbridge is going to get GPS situations, so the Webster dispatchers really would not know what communities to call if they were busy or not. If we were in a tri-community area of the 3, Southbridge, Sturbridge, and Charlton, our most likely mutual aid would come from those communities, and the dispatchers would know the availability of pieces and equipment throughout those 3 towns to be able to send equipment quicker and faster without having those delays. I am for regionalization, that's a definite. I just think that maybe we're not the right 3 communities or 4 communities at this time. I just feel very strongly about at least let's look at the opportunity and the other idea of the other operation with those 3 other communities. So just my 2 cents on that.
Mr. Singer.
Chief, mutual aid's a two-way street,
Correct.
so would it be safe to assume, or never assume, that the percentages would be the same from the towns that we call for the most help, that call us for the most help?
That would be correct. That would be correct.
So the Southbridge, Sturbridge, those are the communities that also call us the most out of that list?
We're a lot on automatic mutual aid for Southbridge and Sturbridge, and including Auburn, actually, for the Massachusetts Turnpike. So with some automatic aid that's already done in those locations. We don't have any automatic aid with the towns of with Dudley nor Webster at this time.
Any other questions for Chief Cludio? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Ms. Meskis, you wanted to say something? If you come up to the table, please.
I was just gonna say that if we're not taking a vote
If you'd sit and introduce
Oh,
yourself.
sorry, Cheryl McKissick from Griffin Road in Charlton. If we're not gonna take a vote on this tonight where there were so many people, I know that in other subjects that are sensitive, we do workshops and we do hold public forum meetings. So I just make a suggestion that if we do table this tonight for vote, that we do have the public come in and hear the follow steps. You know, we're getting a bit of information tonight, there'll be more down the road, so that we are all in the loop in traveling this road with you with information. That's all.
Thank you.
Right.
Mrs. Zafirovich,
Mr. Chair, I move we take no action on regional dispatch.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Wow. None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Singer?
I would ask, though, that we do, as Ms. McKissick had pointed out, set a follow-up on this and make sure it's well publicized so that these people are welcome to come as well and participate in those discussions as we continue to discuss this and get more
I agree.
information.
Thank you, I agree with that. And one thing, I'm speaking for myself and what I've heard from the other members of the board and other people I've talked to, I think we've learned an awful lot in an awfully fairly quick period of time about what's involved in this process. So, if nothing else, we've learned the questions that we need to ask and things that we need to look into going forward. Chief?
If there is a committee that is going to be put on, I would be glad to be sitting on that committee.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So just to wrap this up for everyone tonight, at this point, the board has voted to take no action on going forward and joining in with Webster. But the situations that we've talked about tonight are still very much in play. I mean, we have, we're dancing a fairly dangerous dance with the dispatches we have now. If we have one dispatcher on, as I think has been mentioned a couple of times tonight, if a 911 call comes in, that dispatcher by law has to stay on the phone with that call. If a second call, 911 call comes in while that dispatcher's on the phone, they can't answer it. And we hope that that would be none of us or none of our loved ones that are on that second 911 call.
Just a point.
Ms. Foley, you have to come up if you want to speak, please.
Gail Foley, resident.
Thank you.
If we are on the phone and can't get to a call, it doesn't go unanswered. It does roll to Southbridge.
To Southbridge or
and that, so it's not that the call doesn't get
But-
answered, the
But
call
still not a prime, still not best case scenario.
Correct, but it's.
Okay, if
it's
I
not
put that forward for, I'm sorry.
Right, the call does get
Okay,
answered.
thank you for clarifying that. So, yes, ma'am, if you come up, please.
Hi, my name's Carolyn Wilson, Wamsutter Ridge Road. I would just like to share that it's more than just a dispatch. You have the police officers and dispatchers in one room sharing information. They know where they're going. You know, there's a lot more to this than just pick up and let's move to Webster. You're gonna lose all that personal love. You know, if the phone rings and the girls see on 911 who's calling, chances are they already know where they're going. The police officers know where they're going. I think sending them to Webster is just gonna be a huge mistake.
And honestly, some of us went over to Webster a week or so ago and looked at it and asked some of those questions, and those were some of the things that came up. I mean, you know, you have people in town, you know people that have chronic health problems,
Right.
you know some of the quirks and some of the intricacies. A question I asked is there, I can't think of one example, but I know there are roads in this town that have the same name that aren't connected.
Absolutely.
And knowing we have to go to this section, not to that section, and those types of things. And I mean, that's a concern. That's a concern. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, I don't want to belabor this anymore, but the biggest question I had that I want to get resolved in my mind is if we have a clerk, matron, whatever that position is, from 3 to 11, 4 to 12, whatever that is, what happens at 3 o'clock in the morning if there's an underage female OUI victim of domestic abuse that's brought in?
You have to call somebody in.
And are we not getting, you know? So anyway, there's where we stand right now. This is something that we still will be continuing to work on. This isn't put to rest by any stretch, because there are concerns that we need to address, be it staying with our own dispatch center, or still looking into Webster in further depth, or do we look at, as Chief Cloutier said, maybe look for some other towns. So, sir, if you want to speak, you have to come up, please.
Ed Knopf, captain on the fire department, president of the Charlton Firefighters Union, resident 46 Oxford Road. I just have a couple of points of clarification. I received a copy of a feasibility study that was done on this. Is this what this decision was being based on? So
For
what?
me personally, no.
No.
Okay. So this had nothing to do with of any decision to move forward. Has anybody on the board seen this?
No.
I saw it when it first came out, which was a couple of years ago, I believe, a few years ago.
Everyone's received it.
Nobody else received it?
Everybody's received it.
Oh, everybody's received it. Okay. Because,
That was not a very good study, and I would agree, if you're going there, Ed, it wasn't a very good
well,
study.
I'm gonna go there because it was riddled with monetary errors in the sum of $254,000 one way to the other. So this is not worth the paper it's printed on.
Yep.
And I hope this is not what's being considered.
If I can explain a little bit, one of the issues is that we have been looking at joining with Webster and Dudley. Like the chief said, several years, we have held some of those meetings, Cheryl, up. I remember one maybe a year ago over at the library where everyone came and talked about, which way we go. They wanted Charlton to sign on the dotted line after that came out, and we said no. We said we need to see real numbers, and it wasn't until a few weeks ago that we actually got the numbers, that we could kind of hang our head. They finally had a budget and a revenue source, so we could actually see what made sense, and it was believable. The numbers were believable. What prompted the quickness of this after we got those numbers was them telling us that first come, first serve, basically. If Oxford came in first and took the vote to go in, that their dispatchers would be guaranteed jobs and ours would not. So that fast-tracked this, and that is one of the reasons that, again, this went so quickly. And we went right to the union and explained that issue, and we were coming back to talk to the selectmen. I think it's great that everyone is here and concerned and getting the information as to why this came up and how it came about. All I can say is, if you take my vote, it's about we have to do something.
Sure. And again, I'm talking to this specific document. There's no reason in the world Oxford would join this, because in every situation, they lose money. So there's no way that Oxford, acting correctly, would consider this.
I can only tell you that I have a document that has Oxford saying that they are considering it as the third person, as the third town, and that in how they put it forward was, and maybe Charlton. So I think it has gone a little further, and that was the piece that I was concerned about.
And the second point of clarification, we talked about answering that second 911 call, and this is probably way off target, off topic here, but as it stands now, the current staffing levels at the fire department may not be able to answer that second call anyway. And that's what the people need to know in this town. Thank you.
We agree with that, thank you. Officer McGrath? Yeah. And I'm gonna ask that we finish up with Officer McGrath. We've taken our vote for tonight. We're not gonna be taking any action. As we do go forward, we will be having other open meetings, which everyone will know about, so everyone will have a chance to say their piece on the subject as we go forward.
Mike McGrath, police officer and the union president of the Charlton Police Alliance. Costs were going to be, we just started talking about it. The way the chief has written this up with one clerk matron, that's a 40-hour position. There's 168 hours in a week. That means that there will be times that the station goes dark. Which brings us to the next point, is services. We need to be able to staff the station. We just had a prisoner over the weekend. The law requires if you violate a restraining order, you don't get bailed. That means 24-hour coverage. If our dispatchers are sitting down in Webster, we need to have that covered, not just for 40 hours, but for the entire weekend. So just to hire one person at 40 hours to cover 168 hours, the math doesn't work. This transcends just the police union and the dispatchers that work for us. They are high quality. We have sat down with the town to work out a deal to make sure that they still have positions if it went to regional dispatch, so that when you pick up the phone and dial 911, even if it rings in Webster, you're gonna be picking up and getting a professional dispatcher, all right? But this doesn't allow the walk-ins to come into the station. We had one on Thursday night. I happened to be at the station doing some other business off duty. while the officers were dealing with a domestic situation where someone was struck by their spouse in a motor vehicle. Took all hands to go to that, and these people came in with a situation that they needed to talk to someone, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be there, all right? The dispatcher actually had them sitting and waiting until an officer was available. Staffing is important, but if you go dark, there won't be someone sitting in that station. You have to ring down to Webster and have them call someone and not have the same services. One question I have at this point right now is if you've already taken a vote to not go forward, not take action on this, when will this come up again? I mean, you're looking to hopefully form some kind of a committee, which, along with the fire chief, I'd like to sit on as well, and I'd volunteer to do that as well. But this was laid dormant for 2 years. The police union got a notice on October 1st, hey, we gotta go, and we met on the 9th, all right? October 1st was 13 days ago. And all of a sudden, we're rushing without having the answers to many questions that all these people here would like to ask.
Well, I think that's exactly why that we took the vote that we did tonight, for that exact reason. We need to get those answers.
The next question is there gonna be a plan or motion as to?
Well, we're gonna sit down and put a plan together. We just took the vote 5 minutes ago. So we will sit down, we will look at how the best way to proceed, and both departments will be kept well informed as to what the plans are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your interest and concern. Chief? Usually with me, it's not an issue. My voice is usually loud enough.
There's 50 people in the hallway. Make sure you let people know, people care and everything.
Is there really that many people?
That's like more than most town meetings.
Yes, I think we should go right to,
Right to government,
or, let's
government
see.
study? Or you want to go right to your? I want to go back.
You know what, Paul?
Yep.
Sorry for getting off tangent a little bit. There is a cost for everything.
Okay, folks, if we could take the discussions out into the hallway, please. We have other business we have to discuss, if you would, please. We're gonna try to get back on schedule and get to our regular appointments. The first one we had was with the government study presentation from the Mass Municipal Association. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. And we thank that they were patient.
And we thank all those with appointments for waiting. We had a pretty full room. We were just to deal with that and get that off the table.
Okay, at the
Chief,
board's,
would you close that back door, please? Thank you.
at the board's goals and objectives meeting on August 12th, 2014, you had decided to look at Charlton's form of government. Charlton has no charter and is guided by state statutes and bylaws. The conversation began because the board had wanted to have the town administrator sign the payroll warrant due to our office frequently making repeated calls to come in and sign the payroll, and often members are out of state for business. Thus, the board thought it a good idea to start a process to look at the form of town government. At the meeting, I informed the board about MMA's form of government committee, and you had asked if I could contact them and ask them to come in and talk with you. Tonight, Mark Fisher and Marilyn Contreras is joining us for the discussion. materials that they had handed out. You have, in your packet, Changing Massachusetts Local Government Structure, and they can go through the packet.
And as with, I'll just say quickly, as with our discussions on regionalization, this is just the first step in asking the first question, which is basically, is this something that we should we be, is it time for Charlton to take a look at our form of municipal government and make any adjustments to that? So, again, thank you for your patience in waiting, and thank you for coming up.
I'm going to, I'm Mark Fisher from the Form of Government Subcommittee of Mass Managers Association, but I'm going to ask Marilyn Contreras, who is the #1 expert in forms of government in the state of Massachusetts, to start the presentation. Are there any little dangling things that she missed, which I doubt?
Thank you.
Chairman.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to ask if you just pull that microphone over
Okay.
to you a little bit so the folks at home can
Okay.
maybe hear a little better. Thank you.
All right. My name is Marilyn Contreras. I'm a policy analyst at the Department of Housing and Community Development. We are responsible for maintaining depository of all charters passed and adopted, or adopted and proposed. And we are also charged with providing technical assistance to charter commissions. So I've been in a lot of communities over the course of years, and that's where the expert thing comes from, I guess. And I'd also like to say that there is a town government discussion at the selectmen's meeting on the 25th. And I promise, if you come, I'll have new material. So, but to just focus on the presentation that I sent to you earlier, basically the state provides 3 routes for you to make changes. 2 of them are usually fairly comprehensive, and then we have a series of enabling statutes or discrete actions you can take that's a more incremental route. And I'm not here to help you decide that. That's your decision, but I can just tell you about the routes that are available. A Home Rule Charter Commission is an elected commission of 9 people who have a maximum of 18 months to produce a charter, which addresses the basic structural foundation of your form of government. The legislative body, the executive, the amount of authority you give the manager, the amount of responsibility, a budget process, budget preparation process, any safeguards that you want in the charter, such as initiative, referendum, recall. Those also go in the charter. Those are called by the state charter level actions. You can do the same thing with a special act of the legislature, and I know that the town of Charlton has done that in just the past few years in terms of a water commission, sewer commission, and your expansion of the board to 5 members. There are many communities that have chosen to take that kind of a route to produce a document that is defined in the state law as having the force of a charter. So it's basically a charter. And we have a lot of statutes that are available for you to use if they are responsive to your situation. There's a provision of Chapter 43C, for example, to form a consolidated finance department. There's Chapter 41, Section 1B, which allows the voters to vote on changing a position from elected to appointed. There's also, I'm sure you've seen these, provisions that allow the selectmen to act as certain boards or to propose to town meeting that they be allowed to appoint certain boards. Those are basically the kinds of features that are available. I will say that this has not been particularly explored area in recent years in terms of state legislative action. Most of the action comes in terms of what individual communities want. They have not taken any they haven't made any recent generic statements regarding this, because everyone seems to be proceeding on when it's their time and they're ready, they move forward and they use the vehicles that we have available. And I'm not going to speak long because I want to hear your questions. That's most valuable to you. And certainly Mark's perspective is valuable as someone who has, works in a local government and has met with other committees like yours.
Yeah, I do want to tell you that the town that I am town administrator in operates under bylaws very similar to the town of Charlton. We also have a few special acts dealing with Department of Public Works, representative, town meeting, and so forth. And we have a website that I know Robin can get you in touch with that has sample charters, has some things to look at, different forms of government. But I do urge you that a charter, which is a very organized way of consolidating things and getting things organized, doesn't prohibit you still, until that happens, to make changes within your bylaws and the ways your bylaws can be changed. I know, for example, the question that Robin indicated was whether or not you were going to give authority to the town administrator to sign payroll things on a weekly basis. There's a lot of decisions that you can make as a Board of Selectmen, as the executives, and then there are also a lot of adjustments that can be done with the bylaws that you have. One of the provisions that a lot of charters have, and some towns have it in their bylaws, is having a review, automatic review of their bylaws or of their charter periodically. They set up a permanent committee that would do that. Some towns say every 3 years, some say every 5 years, and you go through your bylaws or your charter and you take a look at them and decide what you want to do to streamline. We had, in our town, we've had 3 charters over a 40-year period, 3 charter commissions. All of them failed. But from each one of them, things were taken that were proposed and adopted through the bylaws. The whole position of town administrator, the whole position of representative town meeting, changing the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5 members, things like that all came out of what was in a failed charter attempt.
In general, I will say it's a 50-50 chance for, from 1968 onward, when this became available. Home rule charters are adopted a little bit more than 50% of the time.
Because it's an all or nothing
Yeah.
option, that's the problem with a charter, that you have to, so if this person has one thing in that charter they don't like, they vote the whole thing down. Some towns have taken the approach, and I'm not saying we've suggested or recommended it, but first of all, taking everything just the way it is and put it in a charter format. Don't change anything. Take your form of government, straighten things out, and put it into a charter format. Charter gives you a lot more flexibility in changing things. It's a lot more structured and it's easier. You don't have to necessarily go back to the state. You're not operating under a lot of state statutes as you are through bylaws. And you do that. But we talk about transition, and Marilyn made reference to the legislative branch, the executive branch. But under the executive branch, we talk about appointing authority and what the authority that people have and what's happening. Is it your idea to go to more centralized decision-making or not? And there's no perfect formula. You'll see some towns that have, centralized in this area, but they still have an open town meeting. Or the town administrator, the town manager have a lot of appointing authority, but the Board of Selectmen still do a lot of things, so there's no easy formula. It's really what fits each town individually and what type of steps you want to take. The easiest way to get things adopted is by taking small steps. When you try to take a lot of big steps simultaneously, people have a lot of reasons to say no. We suggest take small steps, but you have a very good base here.
Well, one thing that brought it up in my mind is a question that came up is, if we have, like, in our town, by law, the town administrator is the head of personnel. But if there is an elected board that hires an employee of that board, who does that employee report to? Do they report to the board that hired him, or do they report to the head of personnel? You see, we don't, and this is some of the vagaries that that got me thinking that maybe this is something that we need to take a look at, and.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
All right, thank you for your time.
the appointing authority is the big thing, and
Yeah.
in a lot of towns, the personnel officer, the personnel function assists in the hiring, but it's not the appointing authority. In most towns, either the town administrator or the town manager will work with the human resources director in that process, but the appointment is either made by the Board of Selectmen or the appropriate department head or whatever it may be. But it's not, usually employees do not answer to personnel person, they answer to the particular department. And that's an area of transition. You'll see if you review charters, there are some cases where they will take the town manager, town administrator, and say, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna act as an advisory capacity. Let's say your planning board, I assume you have an active planning board here, that the town administrator will be part of the hiring process for the town planner. Not necessarily make the appointment, but be part of the process. Then the next transition is the town administrator now brings forward a name for approval by the planning board. And then the final transition is, okay, now the town manager or the town administrator will be hiring the town planner or any other full-time staff positions like that. But that's the transition, and as you look at charters, and I'm sure Marilyn has seen them all, you'll see that there's that different transition that towns go from, some of them make the jump all at once, some make them periodically.
It's very much a comfort level question, where you are and what you feel that would be accepted. But you'll see these provisions, for example, in Ashland, there's a whole paragraph on a consultation process of the town manager with the affected boards before employees are hired. And it's all spelled out in there. So, and the reason they do that is so that it's not dependent upon a particular board.
Right.
It becomes, it's in the structure now. Anybody who comes in, that's the expectation, that's how it's done.
Do you have any other questions, any members of the board?
It's just one of the safeguards that you run into by having a central person being involved with the hiring process, is that part-time elected or appointed boards aren't up to date on labor law and up on those type of procedures. So by making sure the town administrator, or if you happen to have a personnel director, is involved with all that independent hiring, at least you don't run into a problem where a board that's had no experience in it does something wrong, asks the wrong question at an interview, gets the town into a liable situation. So that's the other advantage, to try to have that involvement.
Does town size, budget size, usually ever play into towns' decisions to look at a charter or to reassess their forms of government? Is it usually incident driven?
Yes, size can be can make a difference, especially in communities that have grown significantly, which was more an issue in the 80s and the early 90s. You don't see that so much. You're eligible, if you're interested, to be a city. You can have a mayor, you can have a council, because you're over 12,000 population. But that's a comfort level thing. Yes, that's the one instance I know of. Other changes are, high turnover in board membership, high turnover in the position of the manager. Concerns divides in the community as to, all the elected officials coming from one part of town. There are all sorts of drivers for this stuff.
Mrs. Zafirovich?
If we wanted to pursue a charter that just had our bylaws now, what would be the process of going through that?
That would probably, you could probably do a lot of that locally with your town council, aiding you, and you'd probably want to bring that to the legislature as a special act, so that it has the, so it would have the force of a charter. There are reasons for that, both legal and in terms of of how the Attorney General interprets your bylaws. You can, there's not a tremendous amount of flexibility in the state's home rule amendment, but there's some. So you have to capture as much as you can. So, and that affects how the Attorney General looks at your bylaws. Have you given yourself this authority?
So this is after we submit this would go to the Attorney General then for approval?
No.
No?
No, with a special act of the legislature, it's just going to that, it's just being treated as a piece of legislation. If you have a home rule charter,
Okay.
with the charter commission, the law requires that the Attorney General review it for consistency with state law.
It still involves in order for the special act to go forward, your legislative body, your town meeting would have to vote to send it to the legislature. The legislature reviews it, hopefully approves it, then it comes back for the citizens to ratify. One of the issues that, when you talk about converting from bylaws to charter, in a bylaw construction, you see a lot of bylaws that are rules and regulations. And those won't be in charter, like if you have police regulations, if you have things, those become ordinances, that's outside the charter. A charter deals strictly with how your government operates, the form, the structure it has, and the authorities. All of those things that are in your bylaws that are regulation-based become ordinances. Those you set up as a separate.
Yeah, they're more
shall we say.
operational in nature, and this is just much more structural. The only operational piece that consistently shows up in charters is a budget process and a capital plan process.
Because one thing that we're faced with, I think that every town is faced with, I mean, is, as you mentioned, turnover in personnel. And sometimes you can see bylaws that'll be amended or brought on or discharged kind of due to the personality of a given particular board. For the better, perhaps not for the better. And another thought I had in this process is having something more formal, more stated that can put a checks and balances system in place against the whims of a particular board. I don't know if that's a valid reason to look at something, or.
I'm not sure it's a check and balance as much as it sends the message that the structure is the structure, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's the message that you want to send, so that people don't come in and kind of engage with it to their as most advantageous to them.
Right.
One of the features that showed up in early charters that continues to show up because people now realize what an issue it is this very innocuous paragraph that says uniform procedure for multiple member bodies. You know, about posting and preparation of minutes and taking votes and maintaining quorums, because all that was kind of like whoever was there that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now you've got this charter provision, and everybody gets elected or appointed. It's handed this when they're elected, and that this is it. This is what we do. I mean, that's procedural, but it's meant to be community-wide, so that you're establishing uniformity.
Ms. Cravens?
You mentioned home rule. Could you just talk a little bit about what that means and
Okay. The state passed a home rule amendment to the Constitution in 1966. This is getting a little didactic, but just bear with me. Massachusetts has limited home rule. That basically means that certain areas of the law are reserved to the state. But for those areas within chapters 39 to 44, the community gets to make choices within the parameters of state law. Right? We have this concept called uniform state law, all laws applying to cities and towns alike. So I'm just going to give you a very simple example. Everybody has to have a building commissioner. That's the uniform part of Chapter 143, Section 3. City, town needs building commissioner. appointed by selectmen, appointed by manager, doesn't matter to the uniformity. My own agency, Housing Authority. The Attorney General's office has ruled that just because it does, the fact that you have a housing authority, the only thing that's uniform about a housing authority is 5 members, one of those members is state appointed. Even though the statute says they're to be elected, Attorney General ruled the uniform part is 5, 1 state member. Doesn't matter if you're appointed, if you have a charter. If you have a charter. So, or a special act of the legislature. You've got to get, you need some premise of permission. Either you
Okay.
have the home rule amendment or you have a special act of the legislature to sort of vary from what would otherwise be. So uniform state law is a little slippery sometimes, but it's the fundamental pieces as the Attorney General has interpreted them over time. So the main point of the Home Rule Amendment is to allow this process of an elected charter commission to propose a charter and to allow that charter be amended through a local process. And the other portion of the other provision in the Home Rule Amendment is to continue the state's prior practice of allowing communities to petition the state legislature with their own requests.
You'll find the home rule charter, that terminology normally gets associated with a charter commission, okay, versus a special act charter. A charter commission is much more open, that whole process is much more vetted, you've got elected people serving on it. If you put a special act charter forward, one of the questions when it gets to the state, there's a joint committee, House and Senate, and I've forgotten,
The
they've changed the
Committee
name.
on Local and Regional
Yeah.
Affairs, yeah.
Okay, they're gonna review it, and questions they're gonna ask is, where does this come from? Is this a special group in the town that has brought this forward? Where do the people, has this been vetted? Have the people had a chance to input on it? With a charter, home rule charter process where the commission is elected, that's done, because it's 18 months, there's a lot of hearings and meetings and
And there's
record
required publication.
applications and so forth. So now, when that comes through, it is the will of the people of the town to bring that forward. It's a 2-question ballot. If you decide to go for a charter, the first question is, do you want a charter commission? It's a yes or no. And then you have people running for 9 positions. There are times when people get elected to a commission, but they vote no on the question. But
Yeah.
that's the process that has to take place.
And
But
it, yeah,
it
and
does
it has
get
to be
vetted.
at a municipal election.
Mrs. Efrovich?
Through the chair to the rest of the board, I think hearing about doing a special act of legislature to put our current bylaws and our current, town government into a charter, I think might be the best path to choose. I think going forward, maybe we should look at that a little more, talk with town council, see what we can do with that, see what obstacles we have to face, just start having that conversation. And maybe in the future, if we get that passed, creating a board ourselves to look at further recommendations and changes to keep that open process, open.
Through the chair, you do have a warrant article going before town meeting on the 21st. What kind of warning them that you want to have a discussion regarding charter or study group, government study. And basically what you're doing is asking town meeting whether or not they would authorize you to form that type of committee to kind of look at how you might put that together and having that be an open process.
We work with a lot of committees, lots of times, that's what we get called to, an ad hoc government study committee of some sort in the town. It's a very common and appropriate thing. Tonight, you're dealing with a lot of things. What you need is somebody, all they're really worried about is your government structure.
Usually seating at our meetings usually isn't an issue.
It's not SRO usually.
Yeah, and honestly, in my mind, I'm at the point where I'm doing what we talked about doing with that large group, which is learning what the questions, hopefully learning what the questions are to be asked. take it very, very slowly, and I'm gonna be doing a lot of reading, but, and it's the 25th of October, we have that. Is that an MMA meeting?
I actually,
I believe that's
have
the
it on your
It
agenda.
is an
so
MMA.
the annual
Selectmen's
selectmen's
meeting.
The
conference.
selectmen's committee meeting, that's right, that's right.
Yep. It's
So I
number
would,
6 under new business.
So we'll follow him up on that, hopefully we can get on that. Does anyone else have any other questions?
No.
We're here to help you at any time in the future. If you want, Robin knows how to make all the contacts with people. We'd be glad to send other people, you know, and I know Marilyn would come back if she's all over the place. And we have a bureau of people we'd be glad to send to help you.
We appreciate the help and the support, we appreciate your patience in waiting through the other, and again, it's, we don't know where the path leads, and we're trying to decide, do we want to start down that path and see where it leads, so. We
Okay.
appreciate your time and all the information, it's
Sure.
very helpful.
I have this, brief handout, it's just the major features that are included in charters.
Perfect, perfect.
This is, a group of towns that are about your size, just based on population, and their form of government, and a more expansive list of, charters that you can find on the web,
Great. So flip
of the various forms.
those all.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for your help and the
Sure.
information.
That's good.
Good first step.
Thank you.
John?
Okay, let's see, this weekend's got the edit. All right, next up, our next appointment, grab back to our agenda. Our next appointment is with Ye Olde Commons, and everyone that's here for that, again, our sincere appreciation for waiting. Obviously, we had a room full that we felt we had to deal with before we got there, so we invite the interested parties up on this. And just to give everyone a heads up on where we were, there were some concerns with licensing, entertainment licenses for Ye Olde Commons on Northside Road. One was granted, there was an event held 4th of July weekend. There was a meeting after that, the Tuesday after that, with the residents and representatives from Ye Olde Commons to discuss how that event went. And this meeting is kind of a follow-up to that. So Ms. Craven, can you get us started on this, please?
Chairman Swenson asked for this item to be placed on the agenda for discussion. As a reminder, Ye Olde Commons requested a live entertainment license from the board in April 2014. During the public hearings for this license, residents voiced concerns including noise and traffic. On May 13th, 2014, the board voted to meet with residents, representatives from Ye Olde Commons, officials from the Board of Health, Police, and Fire. Chairman Swenson volunteered to coordinate the meeting and tried to address some of the issues and bring information back to the board. All concerns were addressed at that time. An event over the 4th of July did not go as well as agreed, and the group met again on July 8th. Tonight is to address any lingering issues. Chief Cloutier has provided the town of Mansfield's agreement with a venue that has similar issues, and it has fines for music after curfew. It is attached for your review, as well as the minutes from the Board of Selectmen's April 29th meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. Any questions or thoughts from the board?
What are the continuing issues, Rick?
The continuing issues were that we had hinted that music would be stopped by 11 p.m. My understanding is the music did stop at 11 p.m., then started up again shortly after that. There were issues with speeding and traffic on Northside Road. Now, I do know that since then, speed limit signs have been posted on are they speed limit signs or advisory signs, Chief? Limits, they are limit signs, thank you.
Wasn't it,
Also calls that we need to.
Thank you, we actually, please come up, Chief.
wasn't it music till 11 outside, then it could be here, but
But it picked up
inside?
again outside.
Through the chair. So when we started meeting with Mr. Henning and the residents and the board, you know, and my office and the fire chief, you know, we try to look at all different aspects of the live entertainment venue. For the most part, everything that has transpired over at Yale Commons has been really without any type of problems until we got into the situation with, and I'll just qualify it as raves, you know. So we had one initially sometime back, which we weren't aware of until the last minute, and that was very precarious. We got through that, and then we said that that wouldn't happen again, and we went to put some things in place, you know, where we had officers, staff, you know, to cover the event. What happened on the, over the 4th, not the first day, but the second day of the event, everything went as planned until 11 o'clock. The music was shut down, and then shortly after, the officers that were assigned to the detail went home. The one difference in the venue at Yale Commons for this event, it also involved people staying there and camping. So in that situation, there was calls placed by one of the residents starting, I believe it was 2:34 in the morning, where the music had started back up. And then a second call at 3 o'clock. Just to be open, to be honest, okay, there was a shortfall as far as the communication by the dispatcher that was on duty to the duty officers, and the calls did not get answered for the loud music that started back up. So there has been action taken with the particular dispatcher and also for remedial training. So that has gone forward. So where does that take us? I think all the parties are concerned, you know, as far as speaking for the residents and the emergency services, as where do we go from here? I don't know Mr. Henning's thoughts, and hopefully we'll hear from him as far as what he wants to have for types of types of entertainment going forward. We had the Silver Kingdom Festival. We had an officer there, you know, and that went well. It was paid for by the people that ran it, and they have, you know, regularly their live action role playing, the LARPs, you know. So it's a good venue, you know, and we want to see. I want to see Mr. Henning, you know, continue to be successful, and I also want to safeguard the interests of the residents. The speeding issue, we made sure that the 25-mile-an-hour signs that were absent were erected. I did put a speed trailer up for a period of days after. So we are trying to address those type of things. There is never going to be, when you have large crowds of people, whether it's Old Home Day, fireworks, or what have you, when you draw large crowds of people, where you don't have somebody that's potentially doing something that's not, that there's some type of violation, parking, speeding, heart attacks, people falling. So there's calls for emergency services. And I think we all recognize that as a normal course of businesses that operate. So I guess going forward, one thing that I want to state, that if there is anything that involves the same type of entertainment where there's, I'll use the term encampment, where the people that are coming to the venue stay beyond at the end, there has to be 24/7 coverage with officers. They cannot just complete the end of the entertainment and go home. They have to be there to monitor those generally young adults throughout the night. And you cannot have just one officer performing that because it's unsafe. It's a pretty good sized site, and you would need a minimum of 2 officers to do that. So again, I don't know Mr. Henning's intentions as far as regulating who he contracts with for his facility, and I think that will speak to what, as far as how this board makes decisions as far as the entertainment license. I do not want to see him lose his entertainment license, because live-action role-playing, the Silver Kingdom, that is entertainment. So he still needs that license to operate. But I guess I just want to make sure that all the other things are, as far as the police department, are safeguarded. And I know Chief Cloutier, and his personnel have done a lot of work, as far as educating Mr. Heading and staff and that, as far as things that need to be safeguarded, as far as Board of Health and what have you. So the town administrator has been personally involved, going to the site at different times, trying to understand what was going on, and the idea, we need to address all the issues, because this business is commingled into a residential area, and we need to have answers for our residents and for Mr. Henning for his respective business.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Henning, did you want to add anything?
No, absolutely.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to go a little bit through the background for your edification as well, who haven't been involved for the whole time period, and also to maybe put it in the perspective that we have, or that I have on this. And so, I mean, I appreciate the time for this. Obviously, what we're talking about here, okay, one business, one event, what in a year, it's really taking up a lot of time for all of you. I do appreciate it. I do think that it does address a larger question, though, which is how does the town deal with issues of businesses and residents in regards to level of restrictiveness or control and consideration, a balance between those somewhere. So I think it's important for us to be going through this, and I do want to contribute to that in that sense. The Old Commons, the facility on Northside Road, has been in business now for 10 years. Our business is hosting events of various sorts, games, weddings, festivals, feasts, things like that. In those 10 years, the majority of events have been private events like those LARPs that we talked about. For 7 years, we have had a Renaissance Festival once a year there, which is a public event that runs over one weekend. Sometimes it ran over two, that is advertised and people can attend. In 2012, for the first time, and I would say for, at this point, for the only time, we had an event there, which was rented out to a person and a group that organized a rave, and a large rave, in the sense that this was about 800 people that ended up there, which is much more than our usual number of people at the site. At most, we have usually around 150 at the top end. And there was police security at that event, as the chief noted. However, it was loud, it was long, there were some issues, there was some trouble, and overall it really surprised us with the level of intensity that was there. The Sunday following, that morning we went around to the neighbors and inquired as to what they had noticed, and apologized personally, but obviously the damage was done. At that point, we thought, that's it, okay. It was a bad experience, but it's over. That was 2012. In 2013, there was an event put on, much smaller, within our usual limit, about 200 people or so, private, by the same person, but controlled. And that event in 2013 caused absolutely no interest or attention whatsoever. It wasn't even noticed. It was just within our normal scope. 2013, yes. 2014, so this year, then the entertainment license issue was brought up. This was the first year that had ever been raised. I guess it was a new realization by the town that licenses for this could be given or should be given. And as such, then, it was raised as a public hearing, and the neighbors were notified that there would be a hearing on this, and the hearing was quite a surprise for us, and I believe also the chief and others, as to the earful that we got from the neighbors about just the level of trouble that was caused in 2012. We heard some allegations and accusations of things that happened which we don't know. It wasn't reported at the time. The police chief couldn't corroborate it one way or the other, but there were obviously actions that happened which should never happen, and I wouldn't want to have happen as a neighbor, such as people trespassing into the swimming pool and throwing trash in your yard and things like that. So with that then in mind, we went through our hearings for the entertainment license and accepted a rather lengthy list of restrictions in sense of a cooperative spirit in order to, yes, we want this to work positively, and we want to do everything we can with the neighborhood to avoid any issues, while at the same time still holding this particular event. Again, in 2014, it really only revolved around this one event being put on by this one person, which it's his birthday party, really. That's why he did it the first time. That's why he did it again in the 2 years. It's a private birthday party that he hosts, and it went a bit out of scope in the first year there. All the other events we have are not really in that sense under consideration. There is no acoustic. I mean, there's no amplified music. If anybody sings at the Renaissance Festival, it's acoustic. It's a cappella. So there's no noise question there, and also no question of a bunch of young adults having a party. So as a result of this entertainment license and discussion in 2014, there was cancellation in July of a big event. Actually, the discussion in 2014 for this year revolved around the fact that there was an event scheduled in July that sounded very much like that first one in 2012. That canceled because the security requirements that were placed upon it. The amount of money that the security would cost would have exceeded the rental fee for this site. And the rental fee for the site, being as it was such a big event, for us it meant basically a 6% loss of revenue for this year. This was it basically covered the month of July, or would have covered the month of July and then some. But, okay, that's fine. The small event went forward, which is from Jean-Luc, who is the person who had him in the 2 years before. Although he was rather hesitant because the security requirements put on were so heavy in terms of cost that it exceeded his cost for the site. But he did it. I did a bit of research on the web, tried to find out what reasonable levels and what measurable levels there are, and really there are very few guidelines, if any. So I understand that we have to look at how and what is an appropriate level of security. And I'm happy that we are, and that the police is looking at this, and because it is if anything, a preventative measure that avoids trouble in the first place. As actions that we took, other than the security for the neighborhood, there was a list of actions such as posting signs and no parking signs and darkness curtains for our nearest neighbors because of the headlights that sometimes shine into her house just by the direction that the cars were flowing. So that has been done and changed. All the groups that generally rent from us, they tend to do so on a regular basis. They're repeat customers. They've all been made aware repeatedly of the neighborhood property lines, and we have a no smoking policy on site except for in certain areas. There was a smokers area right next to her property, which we have moved since. So we've done all these things, and I hope there's been quite some improvement in that sense for her. As well, there was restrictions on lights. We have some floodlights. Those need to go out now at 11 o'clock. We opened up a news group to the neighbors. One person responded to it, so that is not particularly active. So after all that, we haven't really gotten any response. For the event in July, for that particular one event that has this attention, we put up directional signs on the roads. I know that there was the speed sign or the speed measuring, I don't know what you call it. Speed was there so that people were seeing exactly what speed was going. I think that hopefully took care of the traffic.
It actually went up after.
Okay, there was a police presence on that road though throughout that whole day, I know. We checked to make sure that trash wasn't being thrown out, and I think we kept that under good control. There was a severe restriction on the level of the music. The direction that the speakers on their stages could be pointed at or were pointed at was carefully considered, and of course then and the time. So I was there. I was there for that weekend. As the chief said, this was a very quiet event. There are unlike the one in 2012, but similar to 2013, there was no problems of any sort, no difficulties with people. The stages were shut down. I checked that at 11 o'clock together with police. I went outside again at midnight, and I could hear them down there. I mean, they were there in their tents. I could hear activity. I could also hear music, boom boxes or whatever it is, but the stages were not on. Then I went to bed, and I did not hear anything at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., nothing. I mean, I'm right up there in the house on the hill, and so were several others, and none of us noticed anything. I'm sorry if there was noise there that woke someone. I'm surprised at that. On the other hand, there is, and this is just in the one house right next to ours, I assume that is where Ms. Ramian was. I know, but I thought you were at the neighbor house. Were you up at your house listening? Okay. Because when I went up the street, even when the show was going on, I could barely hear anything. I have, in the discussions that we've had, in the meetings that we've had, I have heard a couple of times now the quite clearly stated intention that it doesn't really matter what we do. This is a residential street, and they'd want to see the business shut down. With that in mind, I have to take with a grain of salt any statements that that go beyond what I think other people observe. I understand that some people would like this to be a residential cul-de-sac, maybe even close the bridge over the highway, but it's not. And we have tried our best and done a lot in order to be cooperative, even for just this one event a year, which, all right, just because he's historically come there, he would probably like to come back again. I don't know. I haven't received any requests from him. Our dates next year are pretty much filled with all our normal events that never cause any issues anyway. But, and I don't know if he would be able to come up with the money again that's required for the security. Certainly not, I think, if he has to pay 24-hour round-the-clock security in order to have his friends be babysat. I think it's excessive. So that is pretty much what I wanted to say, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or considerations.
Any member of the board have any questions, Mr. Denny?
I'm pretty well satisfied. It's basically one event a year that's causing them an issue. There's no other complaints, I guess, to the chief. There's no other complaints about any of the other venues that he runs.
To say that people coming to his place of business, or any place of business, that somebody doesn't occasionally speed, okay? You can never, I don't care what it is, if it's a kid's baseball game, mom's late or dad's late, whatever, that happens. I would just say to you, on the whole, okay, aside from the one event, we're not going there, you know, for calls because of complaints. So, you know, that type of thing. The problem that happened, again, you know, with the one particular gentleman that for 3 years has held the event was the fact that, we talked to him over and over again that at 11 o'clock, outside entertainment was to stop, okay? If there was going to be any inside entertainment, that would stop at 1. Well, there was no inside entertainment, so at 11 o'clock, those things ended this year. And then shortly after, the officers went home around 11:30. So when the music started back up and the calls that did come in didn't get answered, we didn't suppress that. But the idea was the person that contracted for the site was ultimately responsible for maintaining that, and that didn't happen. So the idea is, we were all dismayed, let down, whatever word you want to use, that it would happen, because we were assured by the gentleman, his name's John Luke West, that wouldn't occur. So, because he knew, and I said to him this, I said, your event is going to be scrutinized, very, very closely, because this is going to set the bar for the future for this type of event. And so the idea is for you and your friends and because he had his own staff people to go around and kind of do their own internal policing of, making sure things were all right. They said, this is going to be on you. And that didn't happen. Regardless, absent us not going when we received the 2 calls, it was on Mr. West and his staff to take and mind his people. And Mr. West could have called too if he couldn't contain his guests as well. So, but,
Mr. Chair?
So anyways, go ahead.
Mr. Singer.
One thing I'll point out, and it is Mr. Henning, I guess, it does appear to me that you have attempted to be, a good neighbor and everything else. From a business perspective, I'll tell you, one of the most painful things I've ever had to do was to tell certain customers to take their business elsewhere. It may well be that this particular client of yours, maybe his friends do need to be babysat. But in the end, they're affecting your reputation. So it's your business, and as a business owner, you don't want to come here. We don't want to have you come here. But it's on you to decide who you're going to contract to use your facilities. You may want to tell this guy, if you're going to come back again, if I have one problem, you will not be coming back to my facility. As the owner, and you'll say, you need to find someone else to rent to. I've had to do it. Painful decisions. I've had to tell clients, take your business elsewhere. You know, it's my reputation. And in this case, it's just from one businessman to another. It's your business and your reputation, and you control who you rent to.
I certainly appreciate that thought and that advice, and I certainly understand it as well. On the other hand, I feel that I have to stand up for where there's a level of cooperation and participation that he has shown, that we have shown, that we've tried to do, against what I believe, no matter what we do, at some point, there's going to be an objection. Some of the things that we heard in the initial meeting were just so outrageous. Okay, I'm glad that that hasn't come up again, but at some point I have to say I've got to draw a line. I mean, it's not this particular one event perhaps that I'm concerned about. As stated at the very beginning, there's a larger question here that might need to be addressed. In regard to this specific, I really wish that somebody had perhaps come by that night then at 2:30 or 3 o'clock to ascertain what level of noise there was. Like I said, I was there. I didn't get woken up. I know John-Luc had his own staff. I know when I went out at midnight, they were up at the top of the road and saying, okay, you know, we've got people down on the field. I know some of them in their tents have music, or outside of their tents. Can you hear anything? And like, well, okay, I hear people down there. I think I can make out music. But compared to the highway that runs next to there, is nothing. So I don't know if they started, if something got louder at night again. I really don't know. But you know, it's not like they started all stages hopping again. That just doesn't make sense. I mean, they pay for DJs and stuff like that, so they go home.
Okay, any other questions for Cindy? Thank you.
Thank you.
So just, Mr. Chairman, as you're well aware, a lot of the venues, okay, where entertainment is held, concludes and people go home. It's a different case here with this particular person because they stay over. And a lot of times, people want to stay up and they want to continue to have a good time. So that has to be regulated. That's, you know, and unfortunately, whether it's your own house party with a lot of people, a lot of times you tell people to do certain things and they don't adhere to it. And so police get called because a party gets out of control. And I know what Mr. Henning's saying, that it's, you know, there's a cost involved, but you know, the problem is I guess that's I'll just say it this way, it's the cost of doing business with that type of venue, with that group of people because of what's going on. If we were just talking, started at a certain time, concluded at a certain time, and everybody went home, then that would be a non-issue. But because they stay there and they want to continue to meet with their friends and have a good time, in this last case, a disturbance occurred that was not tolerable. And so 2 calls were placed to the station in regards to that. And but other than that, I mean, other than that event, you know, for the most part, you know, I mean, Mr. Henning operates a business that really we're not getting called to. So, and, you know, we'll continue to work with the residents if there are other issues, you know, that we had, you know, as far as speeding or other things like that. But no matter, when you have a business, even if no matter what it is, you will have traffic issues.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Craven?
Hearing all of the concerns for the license itself, you do have police details, if needed, be paid, and the chief actually gets to decide when a detail is required. So I'm not seeing that there might be any need for the board to take any action to amend the license. I think the chief has the solution if that's what he chooses to do at that point. And he has the ability to work with EO Commons as to what would be required.
Yeah, I agree, and, no matter what, the basis of the comments here, I do want to state, I really appreciate working with the chief, and, if the decision is, whatever his decision is, we'll follow that. That's not a question. I'm trying to argue for consideration of, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a complaint, 2 phone calls made by a person of all of the neighbors all around.
And unfortunately, we both, let the neighbors down. We didn't respond to their call when they called for help, and you didn't police and make sure it didn't continue, that it didn't continue
But-
after two.
Just to expand on that, in the residency here, there were some other things. There was a complaint about a intoxicated person pulling into a driveway and bumping into a vehicle. There was, so that was another issue. There was an issue with a big truck that was revving up its engine, that we sent an officer to, but when the officer got there, the vehicle had left. So, there were other issues, really. It wasn't just the disturbance after, okay? But in any type of event where there's a lot of people drawn, you're going to have certain other things that transpire, and to try and minimize them. But to say that that was the only disturbance, that is not correct. That is not correct. And I think the residents could, further define some of those things. And I think when we live in a society, we understand that there are certain disturbances that we can, that we put up with, or we understand. Where I live in Spencer, I know when the Spencer fishing game has a big outing outside, I'm listening to the music until they stop. It doesn't bother me. Maybe it's bothering somebody else. But the idea is, where my brother-in-law lives, when Zuka's Hilltop has a big outside wedding and a band, they're hearing it until that band stops. But entertainment, usually when it curtails, people go home. In this case, that is not the situation. When he has people there for live-action role-playing or whatever, if people are camping there, they are not, they've always been well-behaved, If somebody has a mandolin or something sitting around a campfire or whatever, it's not really disturbing anybody. But the idea, this particular event has brought on its own type of issues.
Thank you, Chief. What I'd like to do, is we're running very late, I'd just quickly like to give the residents, if any of the residents want to come up and make a quick response, just ask that it be concise and impersonal, and good evening.
Good evening. Karen Remian. First of all, when we came before you with the problem of Jean-Luc West, when he applied for this license, you guys told us that let him have it. If he fails, you will pull it. We want it pulled. I know, Robin, you've said the chief, and I've talked to the chief about amending it as far as having on-duty police officers if there's a sleepover event. It also needs to be amended because it was known at the meeting when we all met there that the Board of Health was very concerned about the trash issue, which after the Renaissance Fair, there was a lot of trash also, about the bathrooms, about the showers. He does not have the facility to man all these people that he's saying he wants. Another thing is in 2012, after the rave, he did come to apologize to all of us. He also stated he would never rent to that man again. He rented in 2013. My husband and I were away, but the woman closest to the property, Laura, said that she kept telling Jean-Luc he needed to shut the music off. He tried to pay her off. The guy is bad news. He lied to the chief. He said that the music would be shut off at 11. It came back on at 12:05, both on Saturday and Friday. And you guys said that the cops would be behind us on this, and we made several calls, and nobody showed up. At the meeting also, Puck stated that he was going to recommend to Harold that he not rent to Jean-Luc again. From what Harold's saying, we're hurting his business by him not being able to have this guy come back. We have had no problems with all his other events. It's Jean-Luc West that he continues to rent to that causes the problems. Us residents had to keep on them about making sure they had entrance and exit signs. He's saying he's trying his best. How dare he? He should be proving to us after 2012 and promising us never to rent to that guy again. And I can't believe he didn't hear the music because it woke us up, and it came back on at 12:05, right after the police left. And the truck that revved in front of my house because I was going to check on my cousin's house scared me to death. And it revved and it went right back up to the party. I think the license needs to be pulled. If he wants to apply for another license, we need to amend it more than just having more police. They don't have the facilities. The showers were disgraceful. That's what the guy said at the Board of Health. So, that's all I have to say.
Any questions for Ms. Remian?
No.
Your comments aren't falling on deaf ears. I was at that meeting
I feel like they are, but,
Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way.
I mean, he didn't even show up at the meeting
I
at his
understand
own
that.
place,
I
and
was-
you
I
noted
was at that meeting.
I know.
I saw the trash. I heard the Board of Health agent. What this board has to do is try to find a reasonable balance. If there isn't one, then there isn't one. But I think that there's a responsibility not only to the residents of the town, but to the business owners of town.
Mhm.
And I think we have, and as I said at that meeting, maybe this kind of event doesn't work. I think the next step for this board is to talk amongst ourselves, to consult with the Board of Health, maybe talk with the chief a little bit more. And just to be clear, I think what we said at the meeting when we talked about granting the license is that it could be pulled or it could not be renewed. The license expires the end of the year.
That's
anyway.
true. Yep, you're correct with that, but,
Okay. So those are our options here, and the way I'm looking at it personally, and I'll let other board members speak, that event is over now for the year. If it happens again, we'll be looking at next July. The license will be up the end of the year, so we have some time to consult with the Board of Health, to talk with the chief, and try to make an educated decision.
yeah, it
Going forward.
just surprises me that he's come here even saying he's considering renting to this gentleman again.
Understood,
Okay,
understood.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and all, thank you for your patience. We're running late. Yes, sir, quickly if we could.
I just wanted to state, Mr. Henning was at the site at the time
Could
that
you
this
please
all-
Could you
identify?
introduce yourself, sir?
Oh, I'm
please?
Carl Remy, and I live up the street. I'm the one that called in twice, and there was no response. We also called in about the truck that was intimidating us in front of the house, and the police never did show up at the house. If they did, I could have showed them where the truck was, because the truck went right back into the party down the street. So. I'm sorry? Nobody came to our house to speak with us.
I didn't say that he went to your house, he went to the scene, so.
Well, if somebody had come to our house, like we were told when we called, we would have told them where the truck was. The truck purposely tried to intimidate us by shutting off its lights, revving the engine, didn't want us to see who he was. For Mr. Henning to say we're trying to put him out of business, nothing could be further from the truth. We have no issues except with this Jean-Luc West. However, promises were made here. We voiced our concerns. You all listened. You said you were going to make amendments to the entertainment license. Now, the amendments were no music after 1 o'clock. This was clearly violated here. And it wasn't boom boxes. I was the one that called in, and I purposely walked down there to make sure I wasn't just hearing anything. It was loud, amplified music. And Mr. Henning was there, and if he was on the property, I don't know why he didn't shut it down. Because if I could hear it up the street, I don't know how he couldn't hear it. That was his responsibility. That was Puck's responsibility. Now, you promised if there was any violations of the amendments you made to the entertainment license, it was going to be pulled. Those were your words specifically, Mr. Senior. You said it several times.
I believe that I also argued to have very strict terms put in there that would allow us to do that, and was shot down that night.
Well, that night there was over 300 cars, but they parked them all in the back, so we couldn't actually do a count. But I can tell you, there was more than 300 cars there. People were there, they know. I'm disappointed somebody from the Board of Health isn't here. From what I heard and what was described to me, there was a lack of bathrooms. The person from the Board of Health told Mr. Henning how many porta potties he was going to need, and he didn't comply with what was told. So therefore, people were using the showers on the facility to use the bathroom. We're not trying to put you out of business, Mr. Henning. We're just trying to get rid of loud, amplified music in a residential neighborhood and this type of problem. Now, to pull the entertainment license, the chief explained if people are camping there overnight, well, that's an issue that you're gonna need a police detail, which is really unnecessary because when they have the live action role playing, it's not an issue. So I'm not trying to put the man out of business. I think his license should be pulled. However, I think a compromise could be made where there's no loud amplified music. Just no amplified music on the property whatsoever. Let him have his live action role playing, everything's fine. Make sure the trash is picked up after he has events like it's supposed to be. But we're not trying to put this man out of business. It's not woe is me, okay? We're trying to work with the man. Go look at the signs he put up, do not enter and enter here. Little tiny signs like this. I mean, the effort was minimal. To make it sound like he's bending over backwards to help the neighbors is just incorrect.
Thank you. I'm gonna wrap it up. We, Mr. Henning, you had more than
I believe I have
half the
some
time.
replies to make.
It's very quickly.
Very quickly. So, just to clarify, issue of trash was brought up. This was trash bags piled next to our dumpster in excess of the dumpster capacity, which was picked up by an extra pickup a day or two later when they're come through. So it's not trash lying around, just to make that clear. And yes, you're not supposed to have trash bags lying next to the dumpster, but they were. So that's that one issue. Porta potties were there and were brought in to the size required for the group. The Board of Health has never talked to me about not having enough there, so I don't know where that comes from. I believe the police chief can talk to, if necessary, the fact that the number of people there was under 300, so there's no way that we had 300 cars there. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna move on from there. We will be having more discussions with regards to license renewals and actions going further. Does anyone on the board have any other action they'd like to take, statements they'd like to make?
Just, I'm gonna go see the Board of Health.
Yeah, I do want to see the Board of Health too.
Yeah.
I mean, there were concerns. The health agent was down there at that meeting. There were very definitely concerns. Mrs. Zafirovich.
Can we get Ms. Cravers to send us an update, like a status from the Board of Health, a statement from the Board of Health, to the rest of the board?
Okay, we're gonna move on. Thank you all. We're gonna move on. Next up, we have a request for removal of property from Chapter 61. Those parties to come forward. If you would start, please, Ms. Craver.
Yes, sir. Attached, you will find a request from Attorney Francis Fennessy representing and pertaining to property of Peter Millett located on 29 Oxford Road to lease approximately 5 acres to Borgio SPV for the use of a solar array for the generation of electricity and to convert the property from its present agriculture use. As the board's policy states, this notice was sent to the Board of Assessors, Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and Town Council for review. The Board of Assessors, Conservation Commission, and Planning Board have no objection to the removal of said property. Attorney Cosgrove has also indicated that the information provided was correct. The board should now review and decide whether to exercise or assign its right of first refusal. You must open the public hearing by reading the attached notice as it was placed in the paper.
And I will, thank you, and I will read that notice. This is a public hearing notice. Please be advised that the Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, October 14th, 2014, 7:15 PM at Charlton Town Hall, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass., to act on a request by Francis B. Fennessy representing and pertaining to property of Peter Millette located at 29 Oxford Road, Assessors Map 54, Block A, Lot 3, to lease approximately 5 acres to Borrego SPV for use as a solar array for the generation of electricity and to convert the property from its present agricultural use. Anyone interested should appear at the date and time specified to submit concerns in writing. And we'll declare the hearing open at 8:55. My sincere apologies and appreciation of your patience. Do we have anyone else here that would like to speak on this? And Ms. Craven, did we get any correspondence in writing into our office? Thank you very much. Mr. Fennessy, anything you want to say on it? You waited your time.
You have to say a couple of words, Frank.
We want to make clear that what we're seeking is release of the 61A lien. The original lien covered more than the 5 acres. It covered a 21-acre tract. So the lien that exists is what we are asking to release.
For the whole property.
So the whole 21, approximately 21 acres?
Yes, yes.
But only 5 of which would be used for this application? Okay, thank you.
Through the chair,
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
How's that?
We're trying to make up time, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
We do have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Wait, what?
Close the public hearing.
To close the public hearing. I do have a question. Does this property, does it abut residences, and have those residences been notified?
Yes.
Yes to both of those?
Yes.
Okay.
Through the chair, they've been notified through the Conservation Commission for the project he wants to put forward, through the planning board, because of the project.
Okay, so any abutters, residents on the road in the area have had and do have an opportunity
Correct.
to express any
It's all been
concerns
approved by the planning board.
that they would have. Okay. Mr. Singer?
Just a question, is this gonna be, this is right by, I was out, this is, right by both schools? Is this gonna be visible from the road or from the schools at all?
No, it's on the opposite side of the high tensions, you know where the high tensions cut through?
Yep.
My garage is right there, I live right there, the house, the side of it, and the high tensions cut through
Yep.
from the entrance of Heritage.
Yep.
Going up there, it's on the left side of the high tensions.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I live right around from there, so.
Yeah, you won't even see it, I don't think I'm gonna see it.
That's blocked up pretty good.
Any other questions or comments from the board? We do have a motion and a second. And would you restate the motion, please?
Just to close the public hearing,
Just to close the
Mr. Chair.
public hearing. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this? We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye and declares the public meeting closed at 9 PM.
Through
And
the
I would
chair.
entertain the board, Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we approve the removal of chapters, let's see, 29 Oxford Road, Assessors Map 54, Block A, Lot 3, from Chapter 61.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and does that motion take into account our right or choosing our right of first refusal on this?
Yes.
So we're denying, we're passing on
We're
our right of first refusal?
passing on our right of first
Just to be
refusal.
clear. Thank you very much. We have a motion, and we got a second?
Yes.
Discussion on the motion? None appearing, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
You
Thank
said
you
that-
very much.
I'm sorry for the long wait, hopefully it was worth it.
Sorry for you guys.
Oh, we got more.
Oh, this is our job.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night. And we're certainly not running early for our 7:30 appointment. Firefighter Ciccarelli, want to join us if you would, please? Ms. Craver, do you have anything on this?
Yes, sir. The Charlton Permanent Firefighters Association, IAFF Local 4023, and the MDA are requesting permission to host a boot drive near the intersection of Main Street and Masonic Home Road on Saturday, October 25th, from 0900 hours to 1300 hours. This request was forwarded to Chief Purvier for his recommendations. Chief Purvier is in support of the boot drive, contingent upon the following safety precautions. All volunteers must wear bright-colored vests. Orange traffic cones must be set out on Main Street and Masonic Home Road for a distance of not less than 50 feet on each respective way prior to reaching the boot drive location. A minimum of 5 traffic cones on each roadway should be put in place at a distance of no greater than 10 feet apart. And signs warning voluntary boot drive ahead must be erected on both Masonic Home Road and Main Street not less than 75 feet from the toll station. Should the board approve this request, please consider adding the recommendations from Chief Purvier to your motion. Brian Ciccarelli is here on 2 issues, so perhaps you would like to take care of this one, and then I will go to the next one.
Very good. Brian, anything you want to put in on this?
It's been a couple of years since we've actually done this, almost 3 years now. I've been in town for 2. I was the MDA rep for the town of Dudley for quite a while. One of the things the MDA has changed, it's always used to be the original support was from the unions, from the international. This year, they're actually spreading out because of the various combination departments throughout the United States, is they're making it a full-fledged fire department. It's always one organization that the firefighters have used. So one of the things that I put forth with my guys was we're not gonna make this a union issue. It's a fire department thing. It's basically raising money for the MDA, so I thought it was a great opportunity to get back into the swing of things. They have passed their anniversary, so they're revamping the whole MDA strategy now. So they reached out to me, I took it upon myself, went upon, and here I am. So I think it's a really good opportunity for us to support something that's desperately needed.
Ms. Craver?
If you approve it, maybe Brian can speak to this. Has there been any issues or concerns from other towns' town council regarding the fire department raising money in your uniforms? Okay, that's what I'm wondering. Are you going to be in your uniforms, or are you not going to be?
What has been done in the past in most, they use off-duty personnel to physically be standing in the road. MDA does issue us a particular T-shirt that states MDA, where the money's going for. The other towns have used on-duty staff as support, not necessarily in the road, but if it's a hot day to run and grabbing water and whatnot for support of the guys. But it's 100% volunteer. I already have a list of people who want to show up.
But that's a very good point. We would ask that it not be anyone in uniform. If they give you T-shirts to wear, great. But we ask that no one holding the boot out doing the collective be in uniform.
That's fine.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Zafirovich?
I move that we approve the request along with Chief Purvier's recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. It's a great cause.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for getting that going again. And Ms. Craver?
And the second one is bulk storage license. The fire department has received an application from Ralph Nichols of Nichols Enterprise Incorporated for the bulk storage plan for Nichols Enterprise Incorporated located at 125 Southbridge Road. The application itself gets filed and approved by the fire department. The fire department has approved the application, with the only comments of the permit is requesting that deliveries be performed between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday if possible. The next step on the application is to have the Board of Selectmen approve and sign the permit so it can be sent to the State Fire Marshal's office for their approval of the design. Chief Cloutier would recommend that the Board of Selectmen vote in the affirmative to approve the license, and I would recommend the same. Should the board approve, Chairman Swenson would need to sign these forms, and the forms are in your sign folder.
Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Zafirovich?
I move to approve the bulk storage license as requested.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments on the motion? I have one, I guess I have two. What is it that they're planning on storing, and why are you concerned with the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5?
Well, there is number 2 fuel oil. So what he's looking to do is have the bulk storage on scene, on site, where he's not making so many trips down to Rhode Island, picking up fuel. What we've learned with sitting down with Ms. Nichols is ultimately, he's been doing all types of trips, all types of hours for what he currently runs. On the recommendation of from the fire marshal's office, we were looking and putting, because of manpower and operations was Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. One of the things that the chief and I have sat down and talked with him about was his operation. We would prefer it to be Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Ultimately, what was brought forth was in times of need, snowstorms preparation, you know, cost of fuel going up and down. So we were gonna be very lenient with that. One of the recommendations to put it on the license was if there is a problem in the future, if we get operational issues, or if it's becomes a concern of safety of traffic or noise complaints, then we currently have something in place on the license. So we are gonna show some leniency with that to support his operations, but if there is a problem to come up, now we can come back in front of the board and review the license itself.
Sounds like a reasonable compromise. Any questions or comments from the board? We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Night, Ralph.
One question in regards to that, I know we stated 125, it might be 121. If that's a correction, is that a big deal?
Well, I will double check the paperwork to make sure it's the correct
Okay, but it might have
address.
even got put down incorrectly before you, so I just wanted to mention it.
Is it because you joined 2
I
properties,
don't know
Ralph?
that we've ever joined them at the planning board, so I know that the Blue House was 121.
I think the lot line disappears when you
Okay,
have it
if
in
it
2.
does, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Good night. We're going to move on to new business.
I thought it was all new.
The first item on the new business is the winter wash sand bid, Ms. Craver.
Yes, sir, on October 1st, 2014, at 11 a.m., sealed bid marked winter wash sand were opened and read. One bid was received from Hilka Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $14.20 per ton. The recommendation from the Highway Superintendent Foskett and myself would be to award the winter washed sand bid to Hulka Construction Incorporated in the amount of $14.20 per ton delivered. Last year, Hulka Construction was awarded the bid in the amount of $13.95 per ton.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Zafirovich.
I move that we award the winter wash sand bid to Hilka Construction Company Incorporated, co-incorporated, in an amount of $14.20 per ton.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Terry, how many tons do you go through in a typical winter? I don't know, we haven't had many typical winters lately, it seems, but.
Can you come up?
Would you come up for a second, please?
I like Chuck's answer a lot.
Whoever wants to give me an answer, would you come up front, please?
That's a good price per ton, by the way, Jerry.
Yeah, Hilker has been very kind to the town of Charlton. I appreciate the bid that he did come in with. The estimated use on sand, I'm really gonna wing this one, but
That's fine.
I'm gonna say roughly 4,000 ton.
4,000 ton. So 25% per ton increase. This is a substantial increase.
That may be considered substantial based on the total amount, but based on per ton, his costs have increased in so many other ways. I understand where he's coming from with that increase. Business, the cost of doing business in that trade has, as John can attest to, and where he's at, trucks, repairs.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, just the fact we only got one bid kind of tells you. There are others out there, but they're just not willing to haul it a far distance. I think Franny has an edge on the rest of them, that he can give it to us for that price.
Very good, thank you.
I know.
I know. I know you know.
You are not gonna get a better price, trust me.
I know. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Not appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Very good.
Next, yeah.
Don't go
Oh, you're
there.
not going anywhere yet.
No, I said, well, he reacted that way to that. Wait.
We'll see
Should
where
I
this one
leave-
goes.
Should I leave now?
Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. Please find attached a memo from Highway Superintendent Foskett recommending the board increase the rate for private snow contractors for the fiscal year of 2014 and 15 snow season. This rate has not been adjusted since October 21st, 2008. Mr. Foskett is suggesting an increase as follows. A truck classified less than 1 ton with an 8-foot plow would increase from $53 per hour to $60 per hour. A truck classified as a 1 ton or more with a 9-foot plow would increase from $58 an hour to $65 an hour. Mr. Foskett has based the increase in rates by comparing the following towns, and you can see he's compared Southbridge, Oxford, Sturbridge, Auburn, Webster, and Spencer. I would recommend the board consider increasing the rates as he suggested, and he will explain why.
Well, I will try
I think
to
we probably
explain.
just replayed the tape from 5 minutes ago.
Really? Well, actually, that's the truth.
Yeah.
But I think I have a better argument for this one, based on the fact it's been 7 years since an increase has been put forth. I think we can all be fortunate that I've held the line at that rate and maintained a plowing force out there. I can tell you that we every year before the ad goes in the paper, 4 contractors that I have contact with, everyone that plowed for me the year prior. The response from them was, what's the rate gonna be? And my typical answer was, well, I'm gonna hang at the same rate. And, well, this year, it backfired on me. That half of my plow contractors said that they just can't afford to do it any longer. They'd rather have their truck parked. And in all reality, I can give you a couple facts that enter into their thinking. I mean, a simple thing is a plow edge, an edge that you put on a plow. When this rate was established, that plow edge went for $75. Right now, they're over $300.
Plus the bolts.
That's not the bolts, the washers, and the labor.
Bolts about 50
Okay,
bucks.
and to put it in perspective for you, to work the hours that they worked a year ago, most of them changed their cutting edges probably 3 times. So that's a pretty good chunk right there, and we're talking one of the simple things. As a guy that handles a rather large maintenance cost with auto repairs, truck repairs, I can speak to that with knowledge of seeing bills every day. A simple battery for a vehicle, for a truck, has tripled in cost since this rate was established. Things that they are dealing with every time they go out. They blow a hose, it's not a $5 issue, it's $112. I'm being, that's what they're up against. So I've understood this for years, but it's not my nature to know I can get something for a certain price and not just stick to it. But I can honestly tell you that now it's having a negative impact on my ability to provide the service that we need to provide through the winter months. That's a fact. There's nothing I can do about it, so I did this survey. Actually, my assistant did the survey. You do the math and do the average, it comes out to the 60, I had that thing written down here somewhere, but it was roughly $69 is the average for the vehicles in the areas of the, so I said, I don't wanna go up that much. I split the difference. I felt that was a fair way to look at it, so that's where I come up with the 65 for the big. Small pickups are still working for 60, where they can get 70 in any of these other towns except for one. They can get $70 for a 3/4 ton pickup. I don't know how else to put it to you, that the guys have met, they've been very good about working. I hate to lose the ones that we have. I can't stress enough how important it is to have the same people out there every year. Now to retrain and go through the ones that just aren't gonna work. It's costly to do that. So
You make this much more difficult when you have a good argument.
well, I try not to come before you without it.
No,
I mean,
and in all sincerity, we appreciate that. I mean, we appreciate the fact
It's,
that you're very conservative in these things.
Well, I think you all understand I am conservative by nature and by the way I run my department. This isn't something I said it myself. I mean, I think you're probably all aware, while the bad news is flowing, let's let it rip. The cost of salt has gone up $20 a ton.
I'm not even gonna ask the
If you
question.
can get it.
Don't ask me, please.
If you can get it.
Well, that's gonna be the problem, and I ran into that a year ago. I couldn't get it. I cut my percentage in my sand that I put out there, and luckily got by. That's a work in progress that you have to deal with. So I can sit here now and assure you that this isn't the only thing that's gonna go up. But I do have, in relation to this here, if we use the same hours of work out in the field, I hope you have that in front of you, you may not, it's roughly $7,000 increase. In the big picture, you can say, well, that's the cost of doing business. I've heard that word said tonight, and they're exactly right. Sometimes you have to just suck it up, and that's the cost of doing business. But when public safety's involved, I hate to sit here and tell you that if I don't fill that complement of drivers, and especially with the repeat drivers, safety is gonna be on the hook. I don't wanna overreact or dramatize it, but it's very important.
Mr.
Thanks.
Chair,
Mr. Singer,
I would move that we approve the increases recommended by Gary.
Second.
stereo seconds.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chairman votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. And sincerely, thank you for your conservative approach. We do know you do
appreciate
that.
that,
It's
and I
appreciated.
hope that shows, it just, sometimes your hands are tied. This is where we're at.
We've learned that.
We're gonna, yes, it's been a long night, so,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Okay, next up, Ms. Craver, we have appointment of a fire department provisional officer.
Yes, sir. Fire Chief Cloutier asked for this item to be placed on the agenda. He has provided some information regarding staffing and hours, which is in your Dropbox. He will be providing you with the rest of the information tonight. So if you go back to your Dropbox, you will find the information, Fire Department extra time calendar. And there's another one also, but if you wanna go through the time calendar, the other one first, or just open that one.
Okay. The extra time calendar that you see in front of you on the Dropbox is basically what we have had to fill every single shift since July 1st of 2014. Being that we did not fund the 14th firefighter position for the day's position, it has caused us to have to fill every single shift that someone takes off, whether vacation, personal time, sick time, or IOD time, with overtime. Currently, we have 13 positions that we hold in the fire department, and we work 4 groups with 3 people. Basically, they work around the clock. 3 people work around the clock, and then Monday through Friday, we have the fire prevention officer that comes in and works the Monday through Friday shift. So Monday through Friday, we have 4 people in the station, basically, essentially the day's position, but he's also working as the fire prevention officer. Currently, we have 1 person out on Group 3, and that person is out on IOD, which is injured on duty, and that person is out until at least February 2015. On Group 4, we have a member going out, that went out today, as a matter of fact, on the sick leave for an indefinite amount of time. And also on Group 1, we have a member that just has retired from the department after 28 years. And firefighter Mason has left the department, and so currently we have that position open. So basically, that means that every single day we have, every single week, we have between 120 and 160 hours a week that we have to fill in overtime. I was able to present this model to the Finance Committee last Wednesday night, a week ago tomorrow, and I was looking for someone to fill into these provisional positions, one person on Group 3, one person on Group 4, or as I see fit, wherever they were going to work into the department to fill in those holes, to work those overtime shifts at a regular rate, pay rate. Those provisional people that we talked about on the, at the Finance Committee, we talked about it quite extensively, and they are recommending that we fill 2 provisional positions for a short amount of time. I concur with that as well. The firefighters are getting very, very tired from working all of this extra overtime. Some have actually, I've been notified today that there's another person going out on Friday due to a hernia because of a lifting operation. That is not even in here in the matrix of personnel that are out. We need to take a look seriously at our staffing issue with the fire department. I'm requesting that we fill 2 provisional slots. I do not have any names at this time, and the fire department, the fire chief is actually the appointing authority, so I think a little lines got miscommunicated there on who was appointing who, what was being appointed. So I'm just looking for approval to fill 2 slots with a provisional person for the remainder of this year. One for Group 3, one for Group 4, or as I see fit, and go from there to try to curb some of this overtime that we have.
Mr. Chair, I just want to add one piece. The Finance Committee, in their vote, recommended to the 2 per diem, provisional firefighters, but they also caveated it as when the 2 people come back that are out, that they will be released. So this is not a permanent position to come on.
I was
but
going to ask
only
the chairman
during
of FinCom if he would join us for
sickness.
this discussion. And while he's getting settled, Chief, will you be able to get provisionals that'll take on it, knowing that it's a limited time offer?
Give it a shot, which is good. We've done it in the past.
Okay.
In the past, some of the firefighters that have worked in a provisional position actually become full-time because either the person doesn't come back or the provisional person goes away, and then years down the line, we get an opening through attrition, and that person, gets hired, so.
Mr. Morrow, could you give us a brief overview of Finance Committee's thoughts on this?
Surely. We spoke about this for a long time. It was a long discussion. And at first, the chief came in wanting 2, but asking for 1 reluctantly, and figuring that, I need 2, but I don't want to ask for 2. I may not get it. But we discussed it for a long time. It was a pretty much unanimous decision when we came to the decision. One of the things that we also added to that, a caveat you might add, is that all of the hours that these gentlemen work, or lady, or whoever you get for this, will be filling an overtime hour. So these people will not be doing straight time. We're more concerned with the numbers on the Finance Committee. We wanted those numbers to make sense, and the only way they can make sense at all, besides helping the chief out, who needs it at this time, is to make sure that the dollar came back in the form of not an overtime person. He also mentioned, which satisfied us quite a bit, some of the people, that looking at, when you look at the schedule they have, and you look at the different colors, you have different days, and so he could possibly find people who were working somewhere else on odd days and could fill in the rest of the time with us. So you'd get, a very qualified person that way. There was some concern, there was a little bit of concern raised about what happens at the end for unemployment. We have to be careful that we don't pick up an unemployment problem here. We discussed that with the chief, and I think we were satisfied that this is the person that he might get. These are generally not going to be a person that's going on unemployment. There'll be other things, or they may be working somewhere else, and unemployment's not an issue. So although we keep in the back of our mind, because again, that is dollars, we were satisfied with the answer, and we strongly recommended that you would see fit, because all we do is recommend what we're hoping as a board, that you would see fit to grant him this.
Well, I appreciate the thought work FinCom put into this. I really like the idea that on an hour by hour, we're paying an hour of straight time to reduce an hour of Ms. Craver?
Also, the finance committee, the chief talked to them about the deficit that he has in his budget due to injured on duties and out sick. And the finance committee did approve $30,000 out of the reserve fund.
I
Is
think.
that it? Wait a minute.
No,
Or
nice
did we-
try.
no.
Two other things, but-
Actually,
No.
that's gonna come up later. They talked about it. They approved.
Sorry.
I
It's-
might interrupt the
Wait a
town
minute.
administrator to
Let
say
me
that she
start again.
loves taking my reserve fund, but I won't say.
Just as I said that, I thought, no, he didn't, because he wouldn't give that up. So
I was gonna
They
say, again,
approved-
I'm characteristically free with your reserve fund.
they approved to recommend 30,000 during, for transfer at the
Yes.
town meeting.
Yes.
So,
That,
That makes sense.
it's getting, yeah, it's getting a
Thank
little
you.
later, sorry.
I tell you, one
My
quick-
faith is reaffirmed.
If we've been learning anything tonight, it's that we have just, we're at the breaking point with our public safety staffing levels. We are just absolutely. at the
And
breaking
I would like to say that obviously behind us is another chief who has
Well,
needs
that's why I said
also,
public
and
safety. I mean,
there's
that's
no
both
question about it.
departments.
Yeah,
Both-
There's no
both
question.
departments. We've pushed it, and I think I'm starting to hear that twig start to.
It's cracking, yes.
There's no question. Thank you for the work, Chief, in putting this together. Questions or comments from the board?
No.
Then I would entertain a motion.
Through the chair.
Unlike the chairman, I like to let the members develop their own motions.
Takes more time though.
I
And they're not as
Missing that.
concise. I make a motion that we allow the fire chief to appoint 2 provisional firefighters.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Can I vote? Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
I
gentlemen.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Chair,
Mr. Singer?
it's 9:30 at night, and I believe Miss Sprague is school tomorrow. Can we move her up?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. All the end of last year, we let her off early because she had SATs, she had finals, she
I
had.
do have PSAT stuff.
Oh, well. You know what, but that's a fair point. Ms. Sprague, you're on. Well, first of all, no, we have to back up just a second on that. On behalf of the board, we're very happy to welcome back Emily Sprague as our student select person. Emily was with us last year and did an awesome job, and we're very pleased to see you back this year, so thank you for coming back.
Thank you. Tomorrow, Wednesday, October 15th, Shepherd Hill sophomores will be taking the PSAT as well as juniors who had signed up to retake the test during school. Also tomorrow, there will be a MIFA financial aid night for all prospective college students held at Shepherd Hill. Thank you. Shepherd Hill will be hosting a fall fantasy homecoming dance Saturday, October 25th, from 6 to 10 p.m. The cost is $25 per ticket. The Shepherd Hill Triam Music Honors Group will be hosting their annual Halloween festival Sunday, October 26th at 2 p.m. Children of all ages, as well as their family members, are invited to join the music department from 2 to 4 p.m. for games, trick-or-treating, crafts, silly songs, and our always popular costume contest. Admission is free. Peer tutoring will be back starting in October. Parents, teachers, and students can initiate peer tutoring services which take place during your child's directed study period. Please contact your child's guidance counselor to begin the tutoring request. It is greatly encouraged for parents and or guardians to enroll in iParent. This tool will allow parent or guardian access to our student information system and provide parents and guardians the ability to monitor their child's educational progress online. A congratulations to the varsity football team on their 53-24 win against Wachusett High School this past Saturday. The next varsity football game will be held this Friday, October 17th at St. Peter Marion. The game will begin at 7 p.m. The last home game, as well as the last game of the regular season, will take place on Friday, October 24th at Nichols College. And finally, congratulations to the girls and boys cross-country teams on their win against Algonquin this afternoon.
Things are rocking up at the hill, huh?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for our student select person? No? Actually, I have a question for you, and I'm gonna go to Mr. Desta with this. This is a legit question. Did a lot of discussion in the paper recently about opioid use, heroin use in Worcester particularly. I'm not saying at Shepherd Hill, don't worry, not at Shepherd Hill. Well, hence my question. Worcester isn't all that far from Shepherd Hill. Is this anything that students are made aware of. Is there any discussion of that, those issues up at the Hill that you're aware of?
Speaking personally, I'm very involved with the student government, principals, council, and superintendents. I've never heard a thing about it.
Okay.
So I can make that a point, though. I make morning announcements, so
Well,
that would be.
It's just something, it's just, as a parent, fortunately, I might have passed that age, the school age now, but as a parent, I just read, you read in the paper about the ongoing issues, and, not that far down the road from us in Worcester. And it's just something that's been in my mind, and it's been on my list to try to get in touch with Mr. Desto to have a conversation. I'm just curious if they're aware of it at the school and if it's being addressed with the student body. Ms. Graver, you had something?
Yes, we say it like it's just Worcester, but it's not.
Well, exactly.
This is actually affecting, good families. I went to a recent funeral for a very young man who no one would have expected that to happen to. It's there, and I really applaud you for bringing it up and asking the question.
And thank you. You're right, I grew up in suburban towns, and there were issues there, and we're close enough to the big city, we're certainly not immune from it. So I just wanted to mention it to you and ask you, if you knew of anything going on, and my plan is to either go to a school committee meeting or follow up with Mr. Desto on it a little more. Mr. Singer, did you have something on
Just a
that?
quick question. Do you know if the sheriff's brought his face-to-face drug program back recently to the high school?
Nope. I do not. I've never heard of it.
I'll make that call.
You're giving her homework, you guys.
I'm asking real questions at 9:30 at night on a Tuesday night. What's up with that?
It's an excellent program. They brought it to the middle school for 7th and 8th graders in the past. I thought it went to the Hill. It's an eye-opener of a program. So I'll make some calls and ask if they can contact the school and get it back up there too.
Great. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to application for a special license for Mary Combs. Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a request from Mary Combs for a special liquor license for wine and malt beverages to be used on Saturday, November 1st, from 5 o'clock to 9 p.m. at Camp Jocelyn in the main hall at 150 Richardson Corner for a wedding. This request has been approved by the building commissioner, fire department, and police department. All have approved with the fire department stipulating to keep the fire exits clear. Per the board's policy, the license, if approved, should be issued for 2 additional days for the following reasons. Day 1, to allow delivery of alcohol to the establishment, which no sales are allowed. For sale on the approved date and time as listed on day 2. And day 3, to allow for pickup of any unused alcohol, and there would be no sales allowed on that day. I would recommend the board approve the special license as requested with the dates on the license to be October 31st through November 2nd.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Zafirovich?
motion approves the special alcohol license as requested.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And next up, we have an ABCC advisory for off-premise retail licenses on Sunday opening times. Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. Attached is an advisory from the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission stating that the effective October 23rd, 2014, off-premises retail alcohol beverages licenses, which is package stores, will be permitted to sell alcohol beverages beginning 10 a.m. on Sundays. Although under the law, these licenses are entitled as a matter of right to open at 10 a.m. and as such do not need the approval of the local licensing authorities, licensees must notify the local licensing authorities about the change of hours. We have received notice from Tomasky Trading Corporation, doing business as Ted's Package Store, that they will be changing their Sunday hours to 10 a.m. We will advise you of any other notices that are received.
Thank you. So really no action we have to take on this.
No, sir.
And lastly, under new business, the Mass Selectmen's Association Fall Conference.
Yes, and you've heard a pitch for
Yeah,
this
I did.
already earlier.
Did.
Attached is an invitation to the board to attend the fall conference for the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association on Saturday, October 25th at the Tri-County Regional Technical Vocational High School in Franklin. This training is designed specifically for you and will feature workshops on local government reform, community paramedicine, a discussion on the statewide ballot questions, and best practices in searching for and hiring a town manager or administrator. I would encourage the board to attend this training as it is very informative. The conference is free, but pre-registration is required. If you would like, you can either let me or the staff know your intention, and we will be glad to sign you up.
Excuse me.
Mr. Chair?
Mrs. Zafirovich.
I attended an event, I believe, by the same people as for Finance Committee members about 2 years ago, and they put on a really awesome event, so I recommend going.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of these. They are generally very good.
And they do have, one of the workshops they're having in the afternoon is on town government, form of government.
I'm gonna ask if you'd register me for that, please. For that reason.
Ms. Graber, you can register me too. I appreciate it. It's so quiet.
I know. People get what they want and run away.
Leave.
All right, we're gonna move on to old business. We already took care of item number 1.
Well, you don't want to talk about that more?
And we'll move on to number 2, Regional Veterans District. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. As directed by the board, we have negotiated a regional veterans district with the town of Southbridge. The application to the Veterans Services District is included, as well as the proposed IMA. Highlights and benefits of the district include a full-time Veterans District agent, will have assigned office hours in Charlton and Southbridge, full-time clerical assistants. Kara will act as the clerical for the district. Each town shall employ 1 staff member and be responsible for the associated benefits, meaning we would continue to take care of Kara, and Southbridge would continue to take care of the full-time district agent. Charlton will pay the district $16,000 towards the full-time agent. The district is in the position to accept more towns, thus possibly creating a further savings for Charlton. Mike Tremblay, the full-time district agent, is experienced and has an excellent reputation at the state level. He will provide the Charlton veterans with exceptional service, and I am glad he will be working with our veterans. I have spoken to the Veterans Services Division, and there is support for the district. I recommend that you vote to join the Charlton Southbridge Regional Veterans District and authorize myself or the chairman to sign the application and agreement. And I did contact Joe Parentis and ask him to spread that word to the veterans that you were discussing this tonight.
Any questions from the board?
Seems like the state is okay with it, and
The state is actually, his comment was, that will make a sweet district. And I think that he also recognized, one of the things that he said to me was that he understands that there's many towns over the 12,000 population that do not have, are fulfilling the requirements of the law, or meeting the letter of the law, which is to have a full-time veterans agent. He said that they are actually looking at reducing towns' percentage reimbursements if they do not comply with the law. If that happens, you're going to see a scramble for either other towns trying to get a veterans agent full-time or try to join a district. I think we've put ourselves in a great position, joining with Southbridge now. We were contacted by another town who would like to join. Unfortunately, they're not contiguous with us. But if they start to do what they're saying they're going to do and crack down, the town in between us, I think, may come over to the district. So in short time, we might go from 2 to 4, and certainly our savings, we would see more savings that way.
Mrs. Zafirovich?
Mr. Chair, I move that we join the Charlton Southbridge Regional Veterans District and authorize Ms. Craver or Chairman Swenson to sign the application and agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there a discussion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye.
So-
Motion carries unanimously.
Well, I think
Thank you
Ms.
for your work on that. That is, I remember one of our first goals and objectives meeting when you had the facilitator. We talked about regionalization. He said it's hard to push it. You have to wait for that opportunity to come along. And here's one that came, and it's great that we were able to jump on that.
And the town manager there has the ability to do this. He did say that he was gonna take it to the council, so pending no other opposition, we should have this completed.
And another bond with our friends over in Southbridge.
Very nice one, I think, mutually.
Agreed, agreed.
A win-win.
And last up, fiscal FY special town meeting.
And you all have a printed copy of that? Okay. So please find attached the warrant with draft motions for your review. Chief Cloutier has also informed me that he will need an additional $50,000 for the combined engine that is part of the debt exclusion. He was here to discuss that, but I am guessing he's given our student a ride home, so I will do my best to stand in for him. So if you'd like to start from the beginning, I will tell you that Finance Committee went through this, so you will see where they have made their recommendations on the motions. So under Article 1, appropriation of funds for unpaid bills of a prior fiscal year. There are 4 bills. I went through this with you before. I don't know if you want to go through it again.
Mr. Chair, are we
Mrs.
voting
Efrovich?
to approve?
Yes.
Support, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Efrovich?
I motion to support the motion for Article 1 as printed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Okay, number 2 is intra-departmental transfers and/or appropriations for the FY15 budget. And that 15 budget is this year. So the motion is I move that the following sums be raised by taxation or transferred, whichever is indicated below, and appropriated to the following accounts for any purpose for which funds may be expended from the latter accounts, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen or Chief Procurement Officer to enter into such contracts, including leases, and to take such other action as may be necessary or advisable to effectuate the purposes of the foregoing vote, each item being considered a separate appropriation. Your first column is to the following accounts, the second column is the purpose, the amount, and then the last column is from the following source or account. So the first one that you have is to the reserve fund for unforeseen expenditures, $1,000 from the veterans agent salary. We will receive some savings from the veterans agent salary. This was requested by the Finance Committee to be restored, the $1,000 that they had approved to go towards the animal control van repairs. Street lights, restore the budget, $10,000 from health insurance. As you know, in trying to balance the budget, we had taken a kind of radical reduction in the street lights. We were anticipating that we would be able to turn some off. After review, what we've realized is that there was a street light committee, and they're pretty firm that anything that could have been turned off was, and the remaining street lights are there for safety. So it's not a budget that we want to reduce at this time, so I am asking to transfer from health insurance to restore that budget. Library salaries, we have a maternity leave, and they're going to need some assistance filling that position. We have $3,000 from health insurance to assist them. One of the comments was, I think we can close a floor, and I think this is an important thing to take care of. Here's the 2 fire salaries, which I misspoke and said that $30,000 they had given directly. They had voted to approve the $30,000, 15,000 coming from the veterans agent salary and 15 coming from the Bay Path vocational transportation. Bay Path did vote to return the additional monies that they received from the state back to the towns, and that amount that they are returning to us is $16,000. So we're proposing to shift $15,000 over. And the Finance Committee, because of increased dues, their dues have gone from $200 to $204, and to avoid our chairman having to write a personal check for $4, we'll just make the transfer from the veterans agent salary.
Now, I'm sorry, did you mention that we in fact are going to be adding to this for fire?
What I had said before was that the fire chief has informed me that if you go down to Article 4, you have reauthorization of capital debt exclusion. As you remember, at the last town meeting, the town meeting voted to
I'm sorry,
approve
you're right,
things.
that had nothing to do with staffing. That was
But this is a good question for right now. The last town meeting had approved this. It was supposed to go to ballot in an effort to save costs for a special election. You chose to wait until November. It's on the ballot. It's on the ballot as allowing a debt exclusion for these two purchases. When we posted the warrant actually had these numbers because that was what was voted before, and I think this board felt that it was right to stay with those same numbers. Since then, the chief has contacted them, and he's saying that the fire to replace and combine T1 and E5 has increased $50,000. Traditionally, when you put an amount into the warrant to notify the residents, you can reduce that line, but you cannot increase it. One would say that the expectations of people coming to town, or maybe choosing not to go, they might be okay with that number, but if they thought it was gonna be more, maybe they might have come and had a different opinion. So, given that, you have a couple of choices. If you wish to appropriate the additional $50,000 now, you could go to free cash, which I do not have it in Article 3, or you could task me to go and see if I could find an additional $50,000 in transfers. And I don't know the answer to that at this point, but I can,
I would explore that first at least.
okay, so if that's your recommendation, what I would do is
At least
look
have
to
the
transfer.
information.
And the reason I don't have that information at this point is, our town accountant was out last week, and I haven't had an opportunity to sit with her this week, so.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
look at what those options are.
Okay, so I will let you know. So perhaps you would give me direction to put the $50,000 in Article 2, if not, to put it in Article 3.
I'm gonna offer this, and any board member can, I'm gonna ask that we direct the town administrator to put the $50,000 increase for the fire trucks into Article 2 as our primary goal. Should that be reasons why that wouldn't work, then to go to Article 3 as a secondary.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay,
I didn't do it as a formal
No.
motion, but if we're all in
Oh,
favor.
sure,
in the same-
sure,
yeah.
sure.
okay.
I'll
you'll
take that
just-
back then.
Just consider that when you're making your motion,
Mhm.
that would be added in.
And we would revote to support it if it changes before town meeting?
Well, that's what I'm asking you, do you wanna
Yeah,
come
he's
back
asking-
and vote? I'm gonna start printing these, so
Okay.
that's why I'm trying to find
I-
out. If you give me permission to do either or, then I can say you're supporting the article,
Either
whichever
or.
one I do.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really looking for.
Okay.
Okay,
It needs to be in there. What we're asking her to do is find the best
Yeah,
place
all
for it, and we're gonna support that.
Right,
decision.
preferably this way, but if not,
Let's look
go
at this
here.
way, exactly.
Well, then,
And if Article 4 does not pass either town meeting or the ballot, then there will be no transfer. Then we wouldn't do anything with that authorization.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Zafirovich.
then I could then make a motion to accept Article 2's motion as printed?
You could.
With the stipulation.
With the
With that
stipulation, yeah.
stipulation.
If I can find the 50,000 to put in.
Okay, second with the stipulation.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
I had a question
Ms.
about
Cooper.
the health insurance, transfer from health insurance. Does that mean that something is not going to be covered there, or is that going to be made up at another time?
Well, right now, we have health insurance, we've paid it off, we carry a couple of extra family plans in case somebody leaves or someone's, they have maybe their spouse's health insurance and they lose their job. We have a requirement to be able to provide them health insurance because it's a life-changing situation. So we do carry some additional. We also carry funding within the health insurance in case there's a catastrophe and someone has an illness that's not fully covered by insurance, and we have an obligation per se the union, which we've had to do before, and pay for a specialist, that maybe the insurance company isn't willing to pay. So I guess my answer to you is I feel comfortable with this transfer. If one of those issues does come up, we still have the finance committee and the reserve fund.
Do you have any other questions or comments?
I
All
will
those,
get you more information on that too, so you fully understand what we've got funded in there.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Number 3 is Article 3 is capital items and related contracts. I move that the town vote to appropriate the following amounts to the following departments' respective accounts for the FY15 budget to be expended for the following purposes, each item being considered a separate appropriation, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen or Chief Procurement Officer to enter into such contracts, including leases, and to take such other actions as may be necessary or advisable to effectuate the purposes of the foregoing vote. We did go through these before, I believe, so I don't think that there's anything that's changed.
I do have a question. The cruisers, we're replacing 2. Should that number be $90,000?
The project, actually, that should be 1.
It should be 1.
The chief requested to, and I think I sent you a,
Plans to look at a refurb.
actually, what did I send you?
And should this
I had
motion,
sent you a plan that said what the request was and what the
Yes.
recommendations were. And he was requesting 2 cruisers. I'm only recommending 1 new one. We did fund 2 at the annual town meeting, so that means in this year he would be getting 2.5. So, I think that that's, given, trying to work in a certain number, I think that that is doable, and I have spoken to him.
does that motion also have to have a stipulation in case Article 2 doesn't
It
work
should
and it
have,
has to go to
yes.
3?
Yeah, it should have.
Just making sure we're clear on all the stipulations.
Yeah,
Does anyone, first of all, anyone have any questions on the items listed?
so we're not getting a refurbished cruiser then?
No.
Okay,
I'm not recommending it at this time.
okay. Mr. Chair.
You'll also,
Mrs.
and
Ms. Green.
I know that we've gone through this all already. For all the town hall, we have the grant that's been awarded. And we have been putting money away for different projects, thinking that this was going to be the last year that we were going to try for that grant. So after this year, we were gonna start to do the projects piecemeal and in phases. Because we have received the grant, what we're proposing to do is to take those pieces that we thought we were gonna have to do individually and move them over into a municipal center capital, so that we'll have some flexibility in meeting those needs and making sure that we have enough funding to do the original job. And these actually will become secondary. Hopefully they'll all be done, that's our intention. But just as the chief has talked about 50,000 in just 6 months for his fire truck, we've been working for 4 years on this. The grant was limited, and we have gone out to get a cost estimate up to date to find out exactly, where we are, but we're gonna probably use quite a few alternates in that bidding process to make sure that we can get the main work of installing an elevator and the handicap accessible things done first.
Mrs. Zafirovich?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the motion for Article 3 with the stipulations as laid out before.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Article 4 is a motion to accept as printed.
And again, these would be debt exclusions, and each one would have to pass town meeting floor and also a general election.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Zafirovich,
I move that we support the motion for Article 4.
do you have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. And number 5.
Transfer to and from stabilization, given if everything goes forward with the capital, we have left $433,206 to go back into stabilization from free cash for the reserves.
Does that include this, would the 50,000 potentially come from here too?
If I can find it in the transfers, it will not affect that.
Okay.
If it has to come from free cash, yes, this would be reduced by 50,000.
Then I would move to support the motion for Article 5 with the stipulation.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
A decent amount of money,
I was gonna say, that's a nice amount of money going back into free cash.
plus getting all the capital funded too.
That is probably within $25 of what you put into the operating budget this year.
Wow.
And that's what my point that I'm trying to make. We continue to run the operating side out of the stabilization fund. No way to fly an airline. Yeah, just not a good way to do it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Okay. Article 6 is Government Study Committee Charter Commission, and that is to approve the article as, Article 6 be accepted as printed.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Zafirovich.
move that we support the motion for Article 6.
We have a second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Oh, it's almost 10.
It would be the same for Article 7, which is to accept the article as printed.
Wait, is there an A and B?
Hold on one second.
Those separate article, separate.
7, 8, and 9 are all to accept as printed, if we want a motion on those as a
Yeah.
group.
Just, so for Article 7, there's an A and B, they won't take
One motion.
one motion, okay, just
One
making
motion.
sure.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Zafirovich.
I move that we support the motions for Article 7, 8, and 9.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? None appearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. And lastly, Article 10 is a citizen's petition, which we don't have to vote to take a position on at all.
Unless you want to. It's about changing
It
zoning.
is open if anyone cares to make it
Mr. Chair,
Mrs.
Have we done
Zafirovich.
it before? Go ahead.
I would move that we support the motion for Article 10.
Really?
Yeah, second.
The planning board has told us that they are supporting this article. It's for economic development
They're
purposes.
going to develop the property.
Any further discussion?
I'm for economic development.
Yep, exactly.
All those in favor?
It's a fallow
Aye.
piece of land right now.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
So you did have
Yeah.
this with the recommendation.
And I'm gonna make an executive decision, and we will hold on any committee reports and policy reviews, if there are any, till next time, in the interest of the hour. Ms. Graver?
Charlton Planning Board Workshop. The Charlton Planning Board will be holding a public planning workshop specifically to Charlton Village District, Village Center on Wednesday, October 15th. In the Senior Center, this workshop is aimed at advancing the Village Center planning effort that began as part of the 2008 Charlton Master Plan and continue through adoption of the Village District zoning bylaw. Clarification on the BYOB application in Charlton. At the last Selectmen's meeting held on Tuesday, September 30th, during the discussion of a BYOB request, Selectman Safarovich mentioned another establishment in town had a BYOB that he went to a few years back. At that time, we didn't think there was another establishment, but have found out that on June 3rd, 2008, Charlton Center Cafe was given approval for a BYOB. Because this isn't an actual license, there is no expiration date. The board may wish to make the BYOB guidelines a policy and provide an expiration date for these types of requests, which can be written into their letters of approval.
So I'm not crazy.
Not at all.
Vindicated, Joe. You are vindicated.
But
Well,
just to talk on that.
My question would be, if you were visited one of these establishments a few years ago, that would have put you under 21.
Thank you.
He was just observing.
Few years
It's
ago.
Mrs. Swanson, Mr. Chairman. 1, I didn't drink. 2, they had good food. 3, I'm getting older, so a few years still puts me at 21.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, should we add that to a future?
I think we should. I think it's a great point.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of
at
that.
least put a date on it, so we
we do
Yeah,
for
I would
everything else
probably say we
regarding
look
liquor.
at maybe
otherwise
every
it's
year we
in
just renew it like other
perpetuity.
licenses.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Graver, could you look into that?
Do we have any other business to come before the board?
We have executive session.
Can we revisit regional dispatch again?
We do have executive session.
I have no, I'll vote.
I don't know if I'm up there. I'm being ignored.
You want to form a committee?
Yeah, I want to form a couple committee. Okay, that looks. Mr. Chair,
We'll get back to you. Mrs. Zafirovich.
I move that we enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, for reason number 2, to discuss strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. For reason number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body. And for reason number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the public body.
You can breathe now.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll go by roll call vote. Mrs. Zafirovich?
Aye.
Ms. Cooper?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
Aye.
Chair votes aye and declares that an open meeting will have a detrimental or may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body.
I'm happy.
And we will reconvene in open session only for the purpose of adjournment. Thank you all for bearing with us on this long meeting night. Our next regular selectmen's meeting will be October 28th, 2014. And please remember, we have our special town meeting, October 21st, 2014, at the Charlton Middle School at 7 p.m. Thank you all and good night.